All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank God it's Friday, and I hope you are having a wonderful day. Good to be here with everyone. Um, Bumblebee, I see all the things you're writing in the comment section. Yeah, we're saying hydrated. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining us today. It's a lovely Friday, so we say thank God it's Friday. Um, so I'm glad you're here. All right. Before we get started, I'd like to thank everybody who has helped to get us to 59.9k likes on TikTok. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Thank you for power tapping. Thank you for keeping the engagement going. I really appreciate it. And like I always do, I'd like to make a shout out to folks who have, been helping out. So we have Bumblebee, we have Koboko, Ogbeni Agbe. Thank you. Koboko, thank you. Um, a lot has been done between Koboko and Ogbeni Agbe. Thank you so much for your support. And every other person who also part up, thank you very much for support. All right, good to be here today. It's a Friday. We're going to do a bit of history, but we're going to do news as well. Probably start with the news just a bit, and then we'll discuss some things. Before we get into it, let me quickly announce that if you're on TikTok, please click on the heart icon above me right here. This one. Yeah, this one. Please click on it and drop a heart me. Let's drop gifts so we can push it out to the FYP together. All right, let's keep the engagement going so that we can get on the For You page. All right, if you're on YouTube, we're glad you're here. Thank you very much for joining us. Please like the live and also share with your contacts. It would be really lovely to have other people also come be part of today's session. All right. Also, if you're on Facebook, please like and share the live as well. If you're on Instagram, kindly like and share. And folks on Twitter, please like and repost. Again, happy to be here. Just going to check YouTube to be sure we're good, and then we can get started. All right. There's something I want to ask folks on TikTok. When people go on TikTok and write people's names in the comment section, what exactly is what are they looking to gain? Is it for attention or does it help in any way with such accounts? Because I see people do it a lot, and people have been doing it also here today. So I'm wondering if it has a particular benefit for the person who is doing it. I don't know. Thank you very much, Babworth, for the heart me. I really appreciate it. Thank you very, very much, sir. Okay, so I guess we're going to begin with a really nice thing that's about to happen in Lagos State, but it's also a bit concerning because of the people who are sponsoring the project itself and also the antecedents. So, just in case you haven't heard, Landmark Africa is planning to build a 20-seat entertainment center in Lagos, and they're calling it Dream Theater Entertainment Center. All right, it's going to have 20,000 seats. See, I think this is really, really nice. Okay, I saw the picture yesterday and I thought, wow, this is really beautiful. That Landmark will be doing this. But I have an issue with the entire thing. I mean, not with the project itself, but with something I should mention. Let me just go straight to what I have an issue with. Since we, since the federal government began the Lagos Calabar Coastal Road, Landmark as and the owner, I think his name is Paul Onwibe. I apologize if I don't get the surname correctly, but I know his first name is yes, Onwanibe. Paul Onwanibe. Um, he became the poster child for everything that's wrong with Lagos, and the fact that the federal government bulldozed or destroyed his property, and that they did it because he was Igbo, and people went to town. He himself went on podcasts and granted interviews that alluded to the fact that he was being targeted. Forget the fact that the entire stretch had Yoruba people, Yoruba businesses that were even affected more than his own company. Meanwhile, the part of his so-called organization that was so-called building, right, that was, you know, affected wasn't even his building. It was land that was supposed to be part of the beach that he had now built something on in order for his customers, right? And people on that stretch saw it as, you know what, we're about to down saying that, oh, it was being targeted. And a lot of Igbo people went on social media. That was when one of them wrote, this is a very influential woman saying that, you know, if you bring your investment to Lagos, you are, don't bring your investment to Lagos, right? People say don't invest in Lagos. Lagos is a terrible place. Thank you very much, Omotola. Lagos is a very terrible place. It's terrible for your investment. Don't invest there. They are targeting Igbo people and all kinds of things they put out, back in the day, not too long ago. I'm sure you remember the news. And Paul was everywhere. He even wrote a letter. People were against the government. They said they should have gone through another path. And people just said all kinds of things about the project. Someone says the Minister for Works was Igbo, although from Ebonyi. So they knew the minister was Igbo now. That did not matter. I wish I didn't want to go back in time, but if you're interested, I'm sure you can find um, the exchange between the minister. Excuse me. One second. Let me see if I can find you something. I'm going somewhere. What I'm saying, just stay with me, please. Everywhere was flooded with tears and murmuring and complaints about people doing certain things because they hated certain people, which of course makes no sense. But then, of course, nobody really cared because at that particular point in time, all of them wanted to plug into this victim thing. Oh, they are targeting us, they hate us, and so on and so forth. Turns out that the person who was telling everybody that they are targeted him, and you know what? I want to find you that letter. Give me a second. Although I didn't think it was necessary, but because of what somebody wrote in the comment section, I think it would be nice to actually um, them readily. Someone says, "Who gave me permit to now build?" If you become like a politician in this country, you just be dealing with people anyhow. Baba, kilo koina. No, what I have here is something recent. Let me play you something from. Um, let me play you some a clip from the man who is. I'm going somewhere because they will make you look bad. They will tell the world you are tribalistic. Whatever you are doing to even better the lot of every Nigerian is done because you hate a particular ethnicity. The ethnicity will go cry wolf. Meanwhile, that same ethnicity or people from that group are still doing something in that similar. They will not leave. Oh. So they're going to leave. They're going to take their investments to the southeast. Turns out nobody has gone anywhere. Instead, they are still taking advantage of the same space. The question I have is what I'm going to ask at the end of today's session, at the end of this particular story. I'm going to ask you a question and I'll ask if you think it's fair that, I'll ask you this question later. Take a listen to an interview with the man.
Lots of platforms and lots of places I speak, and people I meet when I leave Nigeria ask me about this. And I say, look, Nigeria is the country that gave me the opportunity to do what I built anyway. Yeah, I went into Nigeria with less than $2 million of money to do what we did, and we built this into a $200 million business. In the 15-year time frame. So it gave me that opportunity. So I can't, they say,
to walk away.
Yeah, they say, don't call the forest that shelters your jungle, right? has its challenges. A lot of those challenges are people, right? But it also has its opportunities. And one has to figure out, if we all walked away, then what's going to be left, right? So we have an obligation to keep on trying. Yeah.
This is a recent interview. I'm going to play you something from way back then. Take a listen to this one. And please, before anybody comes and starts saying, but it doesn't really matter, it does. You can't spend so much time defaming a place and trying to talk down on it, and then eventually we discover that you're not really planning to go anywhere in the first place. Take a listen to this particular interview that was conducted. This was, one second. This was in July, and he made some interesting claims. Take a listen to this.
The beach demolition was a real tough one, obviously, because not only had we spent a lot of money and time and created something that we thought was loved and was endearing to the community, we employed 4,000 people there. Yeah. So there are a lot of real people.
4,000 people at the beach.
Who were affected. And look, I'm not going to applaud or criticize anything here. If I was a government, maybe I would have made the same decision. Yeah. Who knows if there's a greater good thing there. That I had to call one by one. We have 436 contracts that I had to renegotiate and cancel. You think of the pain of all the your businesses here. You think of the pain of all the businesses. So there was a lot to deal with. But like Edison said, he said, when his factory burnt and all his prototypes and all his inventions went down, and he said, disasters and opportunities to start again, but more intelligently. So after you go through this sort of 5 stages of grief, you're in denial at first, and you're angry, then you start bargaining, then you realize that doesn't work, and then you're sad, and then you accept it at the end of the day. And once you accept it, you have to make sure when you face disaster is to get through those 5 stages very quickly.
Now, when you hear this, 4,000 jobs, not the company, not that the building was torn down, no, the beach, that was not even a personal or private property, but when the place had to be sandfield, 4,000, wait, I won't, 4,000 people lost their jobs, and then you become a motivational speaker. I mean, I don't want anybody's business to be destroyed, but this, I'm going to get you into some things here. We went on CNN. This was in 2024. I'm looking at the report now from April 2024 on CNN. When Lagos State authorities notified Nigerian business mogul Paul Onwanibe in late March that he had 7 days to leave his multi-million-dollar beach resort so it could be turned down, he thought it was an April Fool's Day hoax. So they went on CNN. There are videos I'm looking at here where people are just saying, oh, it was so bad that he's being targeted, they don't like him, and so on and so forth. Now, here is actually what the Minister of Works that somebody referred to earlier, this is what he said. Take a listen to this, please.
The minister is insisting that the landmark properties are intact and that the owner of the investment has no title to the 250-meter shoreline, which is the right-of-way belonging to the federal government.
No claim for landmark. He has no claim. We spread all his infrastructure. We don't pay for shanties. And even though shanties are on our right-of-ways, 250 meters from the shoreline. So he has no claim. We made all the efforts to spare all his infrastructure, and that's why I say he's a politician. Me, I'm an engineer, and so why he plays the politics, I do the engineering work. I don't know the attention he's seeking for.
The minister is insisting.
So you heard about that? You heard that? The building is still where it was. It's still intact, right? The part he's talking about, they had a beachfront, whatever, there. It's not like it's part of personal land. It was something that he rented or he leased. However, it's not even part of the building to lease gagan. Sorry, the part of the land to lease gagan. So the problem now is, this was in 2024, people use ethnicity. They said we hated the bush, Nigeria hated the bush, everybody hated the bush, Lagos. And like somebody said in the comment section, the person you just listened to is the Minister of Works, is David Mai, is also Igbo. But they said it was against Igbo, and they used an Igbo against an Igbo person. Anyway, the point is this: after all these years of, crying, like everybody hates a particular group, Turns out that the same person who said, "Oh, Lagos is so bad, it's terrible, and everything," they lost 4,000 for beach business, not a conglomerate. People does it take again? What's the size of this place that employs 4,000 people? Anyway, he's now building a 20,000 seat event center in, what's that? Oh, I knew I was missing something. More. Thank you. I knew something was missing. Thank you. Now everything is, the lighting is good now. Anyway, this person who said, Lagos was after him, Nigeria was after him, they must do it this way and do it that way. He had lost 4,000 sick. They're going to move out of Lagos. A lot of people were saying, move your properties, your investment out of Lagos. Lagos is terrible for investment. Put all of that nonsense on social media. Now he wants to build a 20,000 seat auditorium in Lagos. Why not build it in the southeast? Do I like the fact that he wants to build it in Lagos? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, as many people that as possible should invest in Lagos, right? Invest in the southwest. It's beautiful to have people invest, right? And we want more people to invest. But those who champion the idea of Lagos being bad for business are literally staying in the same Lagos to keep taking from that same Lagos. What does that tell you? And this is the reason for all my Turenchi. When you hear people castigate you and talk down on you and say something's wrong with your region and your land, it's not because they have anywhere else to go. They aren't still going to stay. It's a way to, they're trying to create a leverage for themselves, right? That leverage basically is to say, because of what has happened to me, I should be able to get this and this and that. That's what it is. And I know some of these people have a lot of money. I don't care. If you don't understand these things, you'll be used in your mind. You're trying to actually show that you are fair. You want to try and bring the person back, but in reality, you are wasting your own time because the person doesn't really care about this rubbish you are doing. He just wants to use his so-called predicament as a leverage to get stuff that maybe he's not supposed to get in the very first place. And so somebody asked in the comment section, who gave him the land? I don't know. Maybe he bought it from somebody. And again, I have no problem with people building stuff in Lagos or buying things in the southwest, as long as they're not building meth lab factories like they did in Ijebu. As long as it's legit business, it's good for me. No problem with it. I just have a problem with folks who are bent on destroying the image of Yoruba land, of Nigeria, and yet they want to stay and benefit from it. There's a young man who made a video on this thing. I thought I should play, but before I play that video, I want to read you a letter that the Lagos State government had to write to this same person about the landmark stuff. This was March 2024. This was a removal notice. It's long. Let me not even get into it. There's a removal notice that they sent to him on 19th March, and then he wrote a letter saying that and the landmark group and ecosystem hosting over. Listen to this. So I just want to read this particular portion of the letter that the company wrote to Lagos State. The landmark group and ecosystem hosting over diverse 80 businesses in one secure location and employing 4,000 people directly and 12,000 people indirectly quantifies that over $100 million has been invested in the development of the landmark ecosystem. The question is, did they destroy the ecosystem? Did they even touch the building? If 4,000 people work in the ecosystem as you claimed, how come you said 4,000 people lost their jobs as soon as the beach center, or whatever you called it, was removed because of the road that they had already planned to build? Thank you. There's a setback you're supposed to observe. You didn't observe the setback. You took your property from where you were all the way to the ocean because you're trying to create a private ocean, private beach, whatever. And so you said 4,000 people work in your ecosystem, and then the beach property was removed. Therefore, you now said 4,000 people lost their jobs. So the question is, the 4,000 people in your ecosystem, did they work on the beach? Or did they work at the beach? At someone say. They will leave Lagos. They will leave Lagos. I'll play you something from a gentleman. His name is Jurubon. I'd like you to take a listen to this. This is how they'll keep talking nonsense. And you, young Yoruba people, for instance, which will feel like, oh, maybe we did something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Agitation is a strategy. Victimhood is a strategy. If you don't know it, that's your That's your own problem. So let us all fix up as Yoruba people. Take a listen to Duro. I like this particular clip he made. Take a listen, please.
This week, we just got word from the Landmark team exclusively that they are building a 20,000-seater capacity arena in Lagos. They haven't disclosed the location, but it's an interesting sign that this space is getting a lot more institutional investment. This new Landmark Center will join the Ace Arena in Abuja, the Lagos Arena in Lagos, and the Abuja City Walk also in Abuja. It's a sector that's clearly getting a lot of institutional attention.
I'll never invest in Lagos. Igbos, take your money back to the east. They don't like us there. See what they did to an Igbo man, Landmark. The same Landmark is coming to spend billions in the same Lagos. You see, say you're not too bright like that. They've left you behind. I'm not invest. Like say they beg you. Like say if you know buy, another person no go buy them. Like you matter in the grand scheme of things. Why is that your lousy real estate VDN? Oh, it's going to crash the market. All of you are afraid. The government attention, government regulation. Where is it today? We are still here. Now, this is not me discrediting the fact that some things need to change, right? But I've noticed that there's almost like some set of lousy people just looking for something to point out, just to complain about. And I'm done dealing with that rubbish. Listen, if you know you don't like Lagos, Lagos is going to sink, is overpriced, nothing good will come out of Lagos. It's okay, that's your opinion. But keep that away from my page. If you drop all those nonsense comments, it's straight blocking. I don't have patience for that. Look at my blocking list, Twitter and Instagram. Straight blocking. I'm here for serious people. I'm here for people who want to invest, but they are looking for the right information, looking for the right opportunities, looking for people to trust. And I believe I can provide that for them. Yes, we can exchange, we can have arguments, we can elaborate on things. But this constant criticism, I'm not going to deal with it anymore. Carry your rubbish away from me.
I agree with him. I agree with him. We talk about real estate, it's so pricey. And again, like you said, you don't have to like the market, but you don't have to stay there either. 1 second, please. All right, I was saying that I respect what he said, and I actually agree with him. It's possible that you hear about prices of buildings and whatever, and you're like, oh, well, it's too pricey, which is okay. But then maybe you should just go to your village and build there or buy something. And by the way, there are other places apart from Lagos that you can actually go to. People just want to demarket the city, talk down on it, and then eventually, while they are running their campaign of calumny, behind closed doors, they're also trying to invest. Mogalu's wife, Marianne, was the one who wrote on Twitter then that people should stop investing in Lagos. It says investors should stop investing in Lagos. That's what she wrote. Think about it. That's somebody who is educated though, the wife of a presidential candidate. These are people that want to rule Nigeria. I want to become president of the country. Okay. And the husband did not say anything against it, of course, which is okay because you don't want to come out and but didn't provide any any narrative to even balance out, so to speak, what the wife said. So you are living in Lagos. And meanwhile, they are living in Lagos, so they will not leave. They will stay in Lagos, demarket the place. Nobody should come and invest in Lagos. So and then somebody who is saying that Lagos is the worst place now wants to build 20,000. I mean, all the best with this project, and I wish him all the best. I hope we have more opportunities like that in Yoruba land, in Lagos and other parts of Yoruba land, in other parts of Nigeria, and people should use the opportunity to invest and all those things. But it's just the hypocrisy is it's worrying at this point with all this, you know, they don't níbi tán ń lọ. Èmi ṣáà ni pé má yẹ kí èèyàn kan fi búrẹ́dì kó yín lómi ọbẹ̀ jẹ́ pé the haters wọ́n fi ń wá leverage ni. Èèyàn kan ní mélòó ni investment wọn gan. Wọ́n bá kó gbogbo nǹkan tó gbọ́ tó ń pariwo ṣó tó nǹkan tí Dangote nìkan ní refinery. Just be disturbing the peace. And we move away from there, but still in Lagos, I want to read you something from the Commissioner for Environment, right, and Water Resources, Tokumbo Wahab. It says, in line with the directive of Mr. Governor Jide Sanwo-Olu to rid the Lagos Badagry Transnational Highway of all forms of infractions environmental pollution, illegal motor parks, roadside trading, and market displays on highway setbacks and pedestrian walkways. Enforcement operations uncovered a disturbing act of vandalism beneath the newly constructed bridge linking Festac town to Alakija. Wọ́n máa gbé àwọn èèyàn ṣe pé ibi tàbá dé sí kọ́lọ̀ ń ṣàánú gbogbo wa àkàn ṣe pé ìtọ́rọ ọmọ ọlọ́run ni wa by this point àwọn ilé òun ṣe ọ̀tọ̀tún làwọn eléyìí o. Bridge wey they just construct wey go link Festac to Alakija, these people go on that bridge come dey cut out the rods to go sell. E come ṣe àwọn èèyàn Nàìjíríà yìí o. How can you be removing the rods not fish a bridge to go and be selling as a scavengers? And they also want gbẹ wọnú wọ́n wá sun abẹ́. Kò ṣe sọ lóyìnbó. I can't really say it in English and get the point across, but let me just read the Oyinbo they wrote here. Investigations revealed that suspected hoodlums had deliberately vandalized critical structural components of the bridge by removing iron rods, steel reinforcements, cables, and other supporting materials essential to the integrity of the infrastructure. This criminal act poses a serious threat to public safety and undermines the government's investment in critical infrastructure. Following this discovery, a joint midnight enforcement operation involving officers of the Rapid Response Squad (RRS) and the Kick Against Indiscipline (KAI) task force was conducted at the location. The operation led to the arrest of 27 suspected hoodlums, who will be prosecuted in accordance with the extant laws of Lagos State. The Lagos State government remains committed to protecting public infrastructure. I will show you the video. It's paining me. These ones are from the north. The Lagos State government remains committed to protecting infrastructure, public infrastructure, and will continue to take decisive action against individuals or groups engaged in acts of vandalism, environmental infractions, and other criminal activities that threaten the safety and well-being of residents. I'd like to play you. In fact, this one I'm going to show you. Kebale, how bad it is. At this point, maybe there's going to be a way that if you want to cross into different parts of Nigeria, you have to carry a particular passport. They do it in China. We have to do the same. Say China went to China, we have to begin to do that kind of thing. I will play it, but I will show you as well.
This is, sir. You can see how terrible it is here, sir. They dug into under the bridge, the overhead bridge connecting inside Festac from Alakija. It's very terrible. Hello, sir. I want to call your attention to this. This is the bridge that was constructed all the way from Alakija to link inside Festac. These scavengers have started removing iron from the pillar that supports the bridge. You can see it, sir. This is what they have been doing. All the pillars holding the bridge, they have started removing the iron. They break the concrete and they started removing the iron. You can see. This is where we are now.
Báwo máa sọ pillar tán fi gbé bridge dúró. Wọ́n dẹ̀ gbé tó fi rí báyìí. Bridge náà ṣe ṣì. See, our politicians need to get serious. So we have to come up with laws that reflect our reality. Not all this we want to pander and say one Nigeria. We are all one Nigeria, but you have to protect infrastructure. And that's go beyond what you say, you prevent some things by saying, okay, before you get into a particular part of the country, there's a way you have to move. All this freedom of movement, there's nothing that qualifies it. It's just free for all. It's rubbish. Ìkànnì náà ni Èkó náà ni àbílẹ̀ Yorùbá náà ní wọ́n máa wá tó máa ṣe fake drugs. Ibí náà ní wọ́n máa wá tó máa sọ bridge náà ṣe sọ di náà ṣe kọ́ wọ́n á sọ di bólà. Prevention is better than cure. There has to be a way. We have to come up with laws that actually, at the National Assembly, or at the State House of Assembly, you can't have this influx of people who have no business in Lagos. It's not just Lagos, by the way. You see them all over the Southwest. No business in town. Just arrive with bikes and that's it. No trailer. And think about it. Possible when it comes to security issues. When I saw this, in my heart broke because even if it's an old bridge, how do you do this? Well, it's a new one, so it's even. I mean, old or new, it's terrible. Oh, why
This is the way
yara?
it was. This is the way it was. This is where we are now. It is very disturbing. How can scavengers be doing this in Lagos? This bridge was constructed by FHA about 5 years ago. But see what it has turned to become. Within the next 2 years, what they would have done to this bridge, I mean,
Are destroying places, but there's got to be a way to ensure that some people are prevented from being. You can't even be sleeping under the bridge or be seen doing the what. Okay, well, we're going to get state police very soon, sha. Because iṣẹ́ ògùn ọlọ́pàá ń ṣe. Iṣẹ́ ọlọ́pàá ń ṣe. Ṣé bẹ́ẹ̀ ò ní ṣé kò ní local government chairman ni? Ṣé wọ́n ní um, anything like a system to ensure they can protect government facilities, whether it's owned by the federal government, state government, or local government? Is there something that Neighborhood Watch is doing there? How are they able to do this to this extent at the Lolopa, at the Neighborhood Watch? Àwọn tó ń gbàdúgbò bẹ̀yẹn ṣé wọ́n rí bó ṣe tó bá ti fẹ́ sọdá sójì kejì àbí tó bá ń wọkọ̀ wọn mọ̀ sọ kí Yorùbá ni tó bá ń wọkọ̀ lójú títì tán rí wọn ò rí bíbẹ̀ ṣe rí. Why didn't the residents say something? What's the local government chairman or LCD? Kí ló ń ṣe? Is there a way to ensure that they're able to interface with the police so that these things will not happen? It's good that you're fixing it, but how about preventing these things from happening? This is terrible. This is terrible. And the funny thing is, ni Romo wa kó ṣerú kìíní yìí. Àtọ̀rìn wa náà ni wàhálà ni. I'm not supposed to be shouting we're all one Nigeria. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. Anyway, let's do some good news so that we can, you know, take our mind off this terrible stuff. But I'm glad that the government is fixing those things anyway, at least by arresting 23 folks. If you have to, all this vocational center, you do it there, another set will arrive. Is it that the governors of all these other states outsource their own responsibilities? People just arrive doing nothing, carrying Okada. Where you're not supposed to ride Okada, you ride Okada. And I hear some of us too saying that, but they also fulfill a particular kidney because if I'm going to work, I have to leave the house very early. You shout, Senna climb, Senna climb. When you lived in the UK, did you see Okada on the road? Ọ̀tọ̀ ní kó máa gọ̀kadà lórí títì tó yẹ kàn ti gorí títì. Ọ̀tọ̀ ní kó máa ṣe scavenging nínú government facility. It doesn't make sense. But let's move away from bad news. So, the NGX is rebounding or has rebounded, depending on how you see it. And it's quite nice what's happening. President Bola Tinubu, I'm going to read you something from the State House. This is from the State House website, statehouse.gov.ng. President Tinubu commends economic team and NGX for stabilizing the economy and the rebound of the stock market. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Thursday in Abuja said growing positive reviews of the economy by experts and favorable economic indicators signal a brighter future for all Nigerians. The president, who received the board and management of the Nigerian Exchange Group at the State House, said all the reforms satisfied global best practices and helped stimulate the economy, setting the foundation for long-term sustainable growth. The Nigerian Exchange Group, led by Chairman Dr. Umaru Kwairanga and the Group Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer Temi Pokwola, briefed the president on the rebound of the market from 30 trillion naira in 2023 to 160 trillion naira today. President Tinubu commended the economic management team made up of the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Taiwo Yedele, the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Bagudu, the Central Bank Governor, Yemi Cardoso, and Chairman CEO of the National Revenue Service, Dr. Zach Adideji, for their foresight, dedication, and diligence. He said, and I quote, "I can see the excitement in the room. All I can do is to celebrate you all today. It's a thing of joy to have this feedback. When we took over, it was very challenging. I had to talk to myself and define my background to accept the assets and liabilities of my predecessor. I asked for the job and I have to do it. And my capable partner in one of the thinking and reasoning days was Yemi Cardoso, whom I put at CBN. I found a partner in the CBN governor, Yemi Cardoso. We were in the negative with monetary policy and the reserve. We had 30 trillion naira printed and there were liabilities. I thank you very much, Yemi Cardoso. The rest of the team, we owe a duty to the country and our self belief that this is doable. Nigeria can build a nation of prosperity by itself. If the stock market is doing well, then we are doing well. We can teach this in classrooms to our undergraduates. If they can be in the classroom without the harrowing feeling of how to pay and what to pay, then we can build a nation of success and prosperity. Thank you to the chairman of the NRS and all the people in the economic team for what we are doing. My assurance to you is that I won't stop reading, thinking, and supporting you." So that's something really good. I want to applaud the president and the team, economic team. So it was at 2023, just 3 years ago. The market cap was 30 trillion naira. 30 trillion naira. Today, 2026 is 160 trillion naira. This is August. This was yesterday, by the way. It's August 6th. It's 160 trillion naira. And they have a projection for December. By December 2026, they are projecting that they will be able to have the market cap of 230 trillion naira. So that's 200 trillion naira more than what they met, or more than what we had a mere 3 years ago. And of course, one of the game changers will be the entrance of Dangote Refinery into the stock market. So we're looking forward to that. As soon as people are already buying, to be honest. It's just that it is what it is. It depends on access. But eventually, it's going to have IPO, public offering. So when that happens, I'm sure it's going to affect not just Nigeria. It's interesting that the entire continent is waiting for Dangote to start selling shares. And I think I've played it here before. I once heard someone on SABC, the South African Broadcasting Commission, talk about how they can't wait. So you see it also in East Africa, in Kenya. People are trying to buy and they're waiting for him to begin so they can actually dive in. When that time comes, please don't join those who are saying nothing is working in Nigeria. Just invest and make your money. Collect your money. Wake up. All right. I'll see if there's any more thing because I want to spend more time on reading today. But the other things, but I don't think they're actually worth the time at the moment. And then there are other things I think we'll get to eventually. Mumbo. Okay, I think we're good with the news so far. So let's discuss this. So I got to this topic, of course, NGX Rebound, Matters Arising, Awolowo's 1978 speech, and Obasanjo's response. Before we get into all that, I want to respond to, which is the Matters Arising bit. I want to respond to a couple of questions that somebody sent on TikTok. Okay. But before, 1 second though. Yeah, let me find that stuff. So, let me start by saying this. There are books in the market about the war and about the coup, about Nigerian history. There are books out there. I want to first advise that we shouldn't build our understanding of Nigerian history on just a book, particularly if the person is, you know, don't build on one book. I was going to say if the person is not quoting others but I noticed that sometimes people quote others because of their own, goal for writing that book. This particular author, I'm just going to read the person's letter, the person's question, then you will hear the person's name. Again, this does not mean that people are bad or an author is terrible, But one of the things I've noticed is this: there are certain people, particularly from the southeast or parts of the South who are um, uh, they like to pander to the Southeast, or maybe they have a connection with them. They try to write in such a way that they obscure the truth, and they also like to make excuses for the Southeast and act as if everything was done against them, and then they don't really get into the things they did. Anyway, all of that to Renchi. Let me read some of the questions that I received. Let's begin with the first one. So the book is called Oil, Politics, and Violence by Mark Siolon. I don't want to bash any author. Mark Siolon is a good writer, okay? But he writes from an Eastern perspective. By the way, Mark Siolon is not his name. That's a pseudonym, okay? It's not his real name. Um, he belonged to the old Eastern region. I think his father even fought in the war on Biafra side. The truth of the matter is that when he writes, you can tell exactly where he's coming from. So when I saw some Yoruba people having a conversation about Nigeria's history, and the sole, there's some good things you can get from the book, from his books, just to be clear. But their sole reference was that book, or was his book. I was like, we're going to get into trouble. So let's get into some of those things, beginning with the questions that the gentleman asked me on TikTok, my DM. It says, Provocation of the North, Oil, Politics and Violence, page 82. Mark Siolon claims the cartoon of the Sardauna was made by a columnist called Kaz Idakpo, and it wasn't Igbo. This is new to me. Then it says, he also claimed in page 88 that Ironsi promoting Igbos was quality, not quantity, and Igbos were more qualified, that even some Igbos were angry that he was promoting Northerners and felt like he was pandering to them and overcompensating. So we're going to spend some time just to answer those two questions before we go to the speech by Papa and then Obasanjo's response. So let's start with the book itself, Oil, Politics and Violence. Again, because I write and I know that sometimes people may have different opinions and they want to bash the author. I'm not bashing any author. However, there are certain things that we have to correct. So I want to make that very clear. So it doesn't look like somebody is trying to hate on anybody. Nobody's hating anybody. But I think for some weird reasons, folks who come from the Eastern region, when they write books, they find it very difficult to actually own up to basic, truth. I'll read that stuff to you and then we're going to... So, by the way, cause that Paul, if you read... How do we do it? Okay, I know what we're going to do. First, we are going to read the Oil, Politics and Violence. Then I'm going to read the person who mentioned cause that Paul in this book. And then we'll put everything together. Then we'll now see if the person was Igbo or not. So what Siolon is trying to do is to say that because Idakpo, who created the image that people were using and claiming to have insulted the Igbo people, claim to have they have used that Igbo people use that stuff to insult Hausas, that was not even an Igbo person. All right. So let's read what he said first, and then we'll go to the other stuff. Page kilo bueno. 82. So it says here, Northerners were appalled at Southern indifference to the murder of their political and military leaders. Such affront to Northern sensitivities was reinforced. I'm reading Oil, Politics and Violence by Max Siolon. So, Prof, you are right. Shamagbo. He says, Northerners were appalled at Southern indifference to the murder of their political and military leaders. Such affront to Northern sensitivities was reinforced by some particular tactless articles in the Southern press. They use the word South. South. Such affront to Northern sensitivities was reinforced by some particularly tactless articles in the Southern press, which welcomed the January coup with jubilation. The June 1966 issue of Drum magazine caused great offense in the Northern region. This issue contained an article by a columnist named Kaz Idakpo, with photos and passages about the dead Sardauna and his ancestry that Muslim Northerners considered almost blasphemous. Idakpo was not Igbo, but Igbos nevertheless took the blame. They had worn out their welcome to the extent that all of all offense caused by Southerners became synonymous with Igbos. Now, let me make something very clear. Even if the person who drew that stuff was not an Igbo person, if Igbos use that stuff to taunt other people, it doesn't make sense to be telling those people that, after all, the person who really created this is not Igbo. If you use it to taunt others, they are going to get a pound of flesh from you rather than talking about the person who wrote it. But the question is this: who is the Dakpo? And what was the stuff that they called tactless? What was it about? And why did it keep hiding under certain identity? I want to read something to you from Shehu Shagari's book, which is titled Beckon to Serve. And then who was called Dakpo? It will be interesting when you eventually discover the person. Particularly, I hope FFT is here because it was one that sent me the question. I really appreciate it, but I felt we should just talk about it together rather than discuss it in the DMs. Oh dear. I'll find you that page in a second. Okay. That was May 20, 24, 25. Number. Okay, good. I think we're close. All right. Please pay attention. It says, meanwhile, again, I'm reading Beckon to Serve by Shehu Shagari. It says, meanwhile, there occurred another provocation which deeply wounded. I mean, there was a provocation on ground already. Maybe I should start with that one so that you see the balance. It says here, Ironsi's task was not helped by the behavior of Igbo residents in the north. Since his assuming power, many of them had been loudly proclaiming the regime to be theirs, and even making a virtue of the January coup killings. This attitude quickly spread from offices and public institutions to places like model terminals and markets. Some Igbo shopkeepers even took to displaying large-sized photographs which depicted Major Nzogu standing beside the body of the slain Sir Ahmadu Bello, the former Northern Premier. Igbo people would draw the attention of Northerners to the photographs and say of Nzogu, Shinemaganinku, Hausa, meaning in Hausa, he is the one who can knock sense into you. Some people also took to public playing of a gramophone record, calling machine gun, and so on and so forth. So that was already on ground, starting around January. Now, by May, this then happened. There occurred another provocation which deeply wounded Northern and in particular Muslim sensibilities. The June 1966 edition of Drum, a highly popular magazine, was out on sale a few days after the Unification Decree. One feature article entitled Why Nigeria Exploded dwelt on the bogey of Northern domination. It also scorned previous political leaders except Dr. Azikiwe and Okpara, both of them Igbo. The writer was the magazine's editor, Nelson Otta, also an Igbo. So Otta wrote an article castigating all political leaders in Nigeria, but it did not mention Zik and Okpara because clearly, they were perfect. If you are Igbo, you are spotless. Anyway, it says here that it also scorned previous political leaders except Drs. Azikiwe and Okpara, both of them Igbo. The writer was the magazine's editor, Nelson Otta, also an Igbo. Even more distasteful was another article on the slain Northern Premier entitled Sir Ahmadu Rose in his Shrouds and Spoke from the Dead, written by Kaz Idakpo, another Igbo journalist. The feature carried a phony photograph of Sir Ahmadu's robed body placed on a bier before Idakpo and with a crowd watching. This showed Sir Ahmadu allegedly confessing his foolish misdeeds, in quotes, and asking Idakpo for forgiveness. So we see two people in this particular article. There's Nelson Otta and there's Kaz Idakpo. By the way, Nelson Otta also wrote a very interesting book called The Trial of Biafra's Leaders. We've read it here before. But you see, he was the editor of the magazine, the Drum magazine, and he wrote an article that they found, a bit insulting because it was castigating other regions' leaders but their own. And then you now have Kaz Idakpo, who then, wrote another stuff and drew some pictures, who Shehu Shagari also called an Igbo journalist. But Mark Silon says the person is not an Igbo journalist. So the question is, if the person is not an Igbo journalist, then what Silon is trying to do will work. And I'll read to you what he was trying to do. He says here, the issue contained an article by a columnist named Kaz Idakpo with photos and passages about the dead Sardauna and his ancestry that Muslim Northerners considered almost blasphemous. Idakpo was not Igbo, but Igbos nevertheless took the blame. They had won out their welcome to the extent that all offense caused by Southerners became synonymous with Igbos. So what he's trying to do here is to say, listen, Igbos did not do that thing. The person who did it was not Igbo, but the Hausas blamed Igbo people, and then they began to kill Igbo people. That's because anything that any Southerner did, they just said it was Igbo. And of course, that means they were who? They were victims. So the question then arises, who is Curse Idakpo? We are going to the UK. I have a document I want to read for you guys. Omo ero buruku pa. Iro lanla. Tani Curse Idakpo. Ṣé Igbo ni àbí kò kí ń ṣe Igbo? Ìbéèrè tí ó wá kàn tá fẹ́ down nìyẹn very quickly before we move on to other things. Turns out, Prof, I know the way you think about that gentleman. And the funny thing is, a lot of people take his words as gospel. It's quite interesting. So I'm going to read you something here from, which one should I read first? Okpo. It is plenty. Let's start with this one. From Taylor and Francis. 1 second, please. Mumbo, 1 second. Remember we mentioned two names in the book we read, right? The book we read, the book by Shehu Shagari. He mentioned Nelson Ota, who was an Igbo who wrote an article that he didn't like. And then he also mentioned Curse Idakpo, who put out a picture with the Sardauna on Fisinubi Posi was lying down, his slain body. One confess, see Idakpo. He called them foolish misdeeds. This is from Taylor and Francis. Pay attention, please. In West Africa, Nelson Ota, using the pseudonym Curse Idakpo, wrote West African Whispers. That's all I need. Nelson Ota, using the pseudonym Curse Idakpo. Nelson Ota, the Igbo man, is the same person as the Curse Idakpo. That's the point. Sorry, guys. There's a mad person in this comment section. Let me mute him before you know. Your madness can be restricted to your family house. I beg. Focus. Your name is Focus. Abi. Focus on your madness in your family house. Emma go full. Here's the point. In West Africa, Nelson Ota, the author of the book I mentioned, the trial of Biafra's leaders, the editor of Drum Magazine, he had a pen name with which he wrote things at Kobakungbe. His pen name, his pseudonym was Curse Idakpo. He's the same person. But Siolo wants you to believe that he's not really Igbo. Meanwhile, they came to attack all of us as though we're the ones that caused it. Therefore, they are wrong and they just made us victims of what we did not do. The truth of the matter is that it was an Igbo that wrote that thing and came up with that nonsense. And the person maybe thought he was being smart by using a pseudonym that was actually quite popular. So popular that in this particular material I'm reading that talks about West Africa, that talk about African writers of that era, they knew the person and his pseudonym. And that's why I told you, if you read Taylor and Francis, you're going to find exactly what I just said right now. And Nelson Ota, nobody in this world can tell me he's not Igbo. Even his children on social media, and they also, his grandchildren, they are very proud to, they even use his first name and surname as their surname, saying they're descendants of Nelson Ota. And whether what he wrote, you like it or not, is neither here nor there. But the point is, the idea that it was not an Igbo person that wrote that thing, according to Max Shelon, it's a lie. It was an Igbo person that wrote it. And people should stop being victims unnecessarily. You did it, then they gave it back to you. May God help all of us. That's question to number 1. Let's go to question number 2. FFT, you are here. I hope you are getting the answers, Abi. Okay, thank you. Let's go to so he's an Igbo man. Question 2. Let's go back there very quickly. Prof, you should write that thing you want to write though. It says it was even in Nelson Ota's obituary in The Guardian. Thank you very much. The second question is here. He claimed in page 88 that Iransi promoting Igbos was quality, not quantity. And Igbos were more qualified. All right. So I'm going to read what he said, then I'm going to read a couple of books. Let me tell you something. There's no reason to. When people say things like, "Why can't you just talk about something else?" The point is, you two can't you just stop lying in your life? Like we can talk about many other things, but if you keep lying, so a young Yoruba person, and I've seen a number of them, even on social media, they say they want to teach Nigerian history and they're reading Max Elon's books. Of course, I also read his books, so it's not like there's something terrible. I mean, you always find the truth all over the place, so you have to research. So the point is, Tibo Bashi, Omar explain it away. He has a way of explaining away. It's the exact same thing that Frederick Forsyth did in his book, The Making of an African Legend, the Biafra story, where he came up with his lamba that, I'm taking a break, where he came up with the lamba that, on the 15th January, when the soldiers, the officers, when they were trying to, unalive, one second, when they were trying to unalive political office holders, that Kislim Badiwe, he ran across the lawn. You have to think that we are stupid to even say that kind of nonsense. Mbadiwe ran across the lawn and he ran into the residence of the president, who was conveniently not in the country at the time. Remember that one. He ran into that particular building and it was the only place the coup plotters did not think to search. It's in his book, Frederick Forsyth, The Biafra Story. So it's because he ran across the lawn. That's why they didn't go after him. Few hours later, he was having a meeting with the rest of the Igbo guys in NCNC, saying that he was going to be the next prime minister. He ran across the lawn. They will find you excuses for everything that an Igbo person. Listen, I've always said it, there's no ethnicity that is perfect. Not even my own. Nobody only pass. But there's something I learned reading the Bible. Do you know the story of Saul and David? I don't know if you read the story before. 1 second, please. Umbo. I was having a conversation with a friend recently. And the person was like, why did God call David the man after his own heart? I use Bible a lot as reference because those stories, there are principles that can help anybody. So just pay attention. Whether you're a Christian or not, that's not the point. Just listen, please. It says that, Bible says that David was a man after his heart. Why would God make him a man after his heart when we all know that, number one, amongst other things, he slept with another man's wife and killed the man. He slept with Bathsheba, killed Uriah by sending him to the fiercest part, the hottest part of the battlefront. So the man got killed. Why would God call that kind of person a man after his own heart? And the answer is very simple. The answer is this. If you tell David that he did something wrong and say, why did you do this thing? One thing you've noticed about him, if you read the Bible a lot, any small thing like this, he's already apologizing. I'm sorry. What's the mess up? But when he apologizes, not so that he will repeat it again. That's not the point. It's just that he feels bad for anything. Once you call him out, he doesn't try to argue. Excuse me. Saul, on the other hand, who was the first king of Israel, any small thing, he will say it was somebody else. God, they said I should go and wait for priest to come. The priest was taking time. God went to start sacrificing animals. The priest comes along and says, that's Prophet Samuel. Why are you doing this? It's the people with me that made me do it. The point is that when you have an ethnicity, it's not like any ethnicity in Nigeria is perfect. I'm not saying your people are perfect. But when you have a group whose destiny is to always mark things up by saying it's somebody else, there's no way the other people will not also respond and say, are you dumb? Can you not just own up and say, I'm sorry, let's move on? They are incapable of saying sorry because they don't want to. And I'll tell you why. Because there's a narrative that's been going on since the 1930s that they are superior. You see, once you claim superiority, you're going to have to be superhuman. And if you're superhuman, you can't make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you have to deny those mistakes. And when you deny those mistakes, people are going to now tell you how not just human you are, maybe you're even subpar. In other words, you're not even as high as who you are telling you are superior to. Because who on earth does not make mistakes? Nobody. Even you, myself, we make mistakes on a daily basis. But what makes you different as a person, even if you work in an organization and you see a person who is always messing up, but they never own up, it will not take long for you to tell the person to get out. That's what happens in Nigerian history. A group can say, I can tell you what Yoruba people have done and what could have done. And I was talking to my wife the other day. I said, the major problem with Yoruba side is that whatever we do is against ourselves. We do it amongst ourselves, and then the fallout might affect Nigeria. We never had a plan to destroy anybody's regions. It's the people that plan to destroy other people's regions. I tell you that they are better than everybody. They never made any mistakes. When they make obvious mistakes, they cannot say, you know what, we are humans, that happened, let's move on. No, they'll be telling you, forget about it because it never happened. Or it was your father that did it, it was not my father. Meanwhile, every record tells you it's his own father, grandfather, great-grandfather, children, nurses, nephews, nieces. The entire family got together to do nonsense, but they never own up. So in case you are here, like the clown that I had to mute earlier, I didn't block him. I want him to be here. In case you are here, you're wondering why is he always responding? Because you cannot stop lying. Your fathers already lied a lot of lies in books. We are not even done responding to those ones. You then came up to come and continue the legacy. We are going to stop. We're going to make sure that we stop in your tracks by presenting the truth. Nobody hates anybody. And if you feel hated, don't come on this platform again. God bless you. Okay. What did Oga say? He says here, it's not Oga. What did the writer say? Kilo kono mumbo. In the absence of the vibrant and instant news media of today, check out okay, let's go back just a bit. It says there were substantial promotions for these northern officers as there are many more experienced officers ahead of them. The question is that, no, let me go back just a bit again. In fairness, it should be pointed out that the surviving northern officers were also elevated. There's no way to read this without going back. Every time I go back, I have to go back again. So, backstory. A lot of people were already killed. 4 senior officers from the north were killed. 2 senior officers from the west were killed. Historians say that the man that was killed was not from the east, even though it was Igbo, was from the Midwest. That's Otto Negbe. But be that as it may, the point is that other regions lost a lot of officers, particularly the north. They lost Lagema, they lost Pam, they lost Kerr Mohammed, they lost Memalari. The west, we lost Yoruba, we lost Samarade Mulegun, and we lost Ralph Shodainde. Now, after everything had calmed down, they've killed everybody they wanted to kill. Gowon was the only one left standing among the senior officers in the north. There were other officers, but the senior one, the most senior at the time, was Gowon. I was left after they don't kill everybody. Yoruba people still had a few people. To be fair, Baba Femi Ogundipe was in the UK. That's why they didn't kill him. I said we're going to have a session where we're going to discuss, the British archives. I didn't do it this week. It was intentional. I'm always very careful when I want to do that stuff because I want to just speak what I want to do because that thing is explosive. So maybe not even maybe, by the grace of God, next week we're going to look at some of those things very soon. Let's just get back into this. On January 17, 1966, the Deputy Assistant Adjutant and Quartermaster General of 1 Brigade, Major Simeon Adegoke, was shot dead by a twitchy northern soldier at the 4th Battalion who mistakenly believed that Adegoke was an accomplice to the January coup. Adegoke was on leave at the time of the coup, but when he heard about it, he decided to visit the 4th Battalion. He was arrested, en route, and detained, then shot when he tried to escape. Lieutenant Colonel Gowon was also a former member of the 4th Battalion. Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Gowon was also a former member of the 4th Battalion. Gowon's close friend, James Pam, was murdered during the January coup, and he was also on good terms with some of the other men that were killed. Gowon tried to talk to and pacify northern soldiers who were becoming increasingly rebellious. He spent several hours trying to convince northern officers in the Federal Guards to accept their new commanding officer, Major Ochei, and Igbo. Even then, northern soldiers in the Federal Guards... I'm going somewhere. I just need to go back just a bit. Even then, northern soldiers in the Federal Guards acquiesced to Ochei's command on the condition that Captain Joe Garba be appointed as Ochei's deputy. Let's go very quickly. Command postings in the army qualitatively, not quantitatively, reinforce Igbo representation. You see, we explain it away by saying it's not quantitatively, it's qualitatively. It's nonsense. It's both qualitative and quantitative. People of God, if you want to, Jesus Christ, if you want to promote officers, right, and you promote 18 Igbo officers, is it qualitative or quantitative? Why would you say it's qualitative, not quantitative, when it is 18 out of 18? That's one. Number two, they eventually say, let's add some people who are not Igbo, so it doesn't look like it's Igbo. So they added 3 people from the north, making it 21. 18 and 3 with no Yoruba. Is it qualitative or quantitative? Why does the writer feel the need to tell us that it's just qualitative, not quantitative? Sorry, guys. We attract a lot of retards sometimes, but we also attract more fantastically sound minds. And many of you, I'm glad you're very sound and you teach me as well, but you allow me to deal with one of these retards who keep coming here. Samek, if you want to come, you can sit down and listen, but retards think you are retarded, so you can't be typing in the comment section. You can sit down and listen, but your retardation is permanent and is generational. I don't want you to come and use it to Kuba or Amibi. So just listen. All right. Your parents lied to you. It's a curse. If you want to trigger me, just mention how Sabek just did. So I'm trying to find a way to calm myself down, because honestly, I'll send you to the people who refuse to train you. You guys will open your mouth and mention Awo as if anybody in your lineage can come close to even latching his shoes. 1 second, please. We play too much in this country. We're talking with retarded people. To be Awo. That's why we're not going. We war in Egberi. You look through their history, there's nothing of value. I'll read something to you first before I go back to the. Okay, you can carry one on. I think I got so now can I see where the Anthony now wrote to call. It says here, command postings in the army, qualitatively, not quantitatively. Again, this is nonsense. Reinforced Igbo representation in the officer corps. Before the January coup, Igbos held 7 of the 17 most senior positions in the army. The ratio increased slightly to 8 out of 17 by March 1966. However, Igbo officers in command positions were promoted to more senior posts. Although Igbo representation did not numerically increase by a significant margin, it's a lie. I'll read to you later. A number of Igbo officers were promoted to fill the void created by the officers murdered in January. After it did not really increase numerically, but a number of Igbo officers were promoted to fill the void created by the officers murdered in January. Who murdered the officers and where were the officers from? Definitely not from the Igbo land. Let's go on. After the drafting of commanding officers, such as Lieutenant Colonels Ojuku, Kurubo, Fajui, Katina, and Ejo to the SMC, Aguiyi went with seniority and appointed the most senior officer then serving in the Northern Region, Lieutenant Colonel Basi, to command 1 brigade in Kaduna, and then the most senior officer serving in the South, Lieutenant Colonel Njoku, to command 2 brigade in Lagos. Second and third battalions of the army and the first risk squadron were placed under the command of their deputy commanders, Majors Henry Goba, Israel Okoro, and Captain Ukpo Isong, respectively. All 3 deputies were from the Eastern region. And so you said that they put all those people there because they were senior. Then they made sure that all the deputies were also from the Eastern region. But we're talking about qualitative, not quantitative. People must think that people are as dumb as their family members because you just repeat rubbish. More continue, Sha. Where were we? All 3 deputies were from the Eastern region, and with the exception of Isong, all the deputies, with the exception of Isong, were Igbo. So the commander of all the battalions, Igbos. Okay? The deputies also, apart from Isong, the other deputies were Igbo. And even Isong was also from the Eastern region, even though it was not Igbo. So the rest of you, we'll continue. With Lieutenant Colonels Ilarin Njoku and Duke Basi commanding the 2 brigades, Major Tony Eze commanding the Lagos Garrison Organization, Major John Obienu in charge of the 2nd Risk Squadron, Major Gabriel Okonweze commanding the Abeokuta Garrison, and Major Ogbugo Kalu commanding the NMTC. Most of the army's prominent command postings were held by Easterners. Wait though, listen to the explanation. In fairness, it should be pointed out that the surviving Northern officers were also elevated, with Lieutenant Colonel Gowon being appointed Chief of Staff at Army Headquarters, and Major Murtala Mohammed was appointed Inspector of Signals to replace Major Emmanuel Fajina, who before the coup had vacated the post to become the brigade major of 2 brigade. Majors Akakan and Shua were appointed commanders of the 4th and 5th battalions, respectively, and Major Ibrahim Haruna replaced Lieutenant Colonel F. Young as the chief ordnance officer. There's an ethnicity you cannot hear anything about, Abi. Which ethnicity is that? You can write in the comment section if you know what I'm talking about. There's a particular ethnicity you did not hear anything about. And also, the ones you start hearing about, folks from the north that were also elevated, you notice that once you go on later, I'll tell you why. Yoruba is the one you notice that is missing, Abi. Thank you very much for staying attentive. Let's go on. It says these were substantial promotions for these northern officers, as there were many more experienced officers ahead of them. Who were the officers ahead of them? That's a very good question. Let's read something. 1 second. There are 2 books that I think will give us the answer. See, you have already done it and you have done it. That's okay. Just enjoy it. Don't try and rub it in our faces. Let me first read something to you from the 1968 speech that was delivered in Addis Ababa by Anthony Nauro. The opportunities of January 15 were misused in several ways by the Iransi regime in the months that followed. For a while, every Nigerian hoped that the country would go on to achieve greater progress in its development. Generally. 1 second, please. Let me go back. The opportunities of January 15 were misused in several ways by the Iransi regime in the months that followed. For a while, every Nigerian hoped that the country would go on to achieve greater progress in its development generally. Unfortunately, General Iransi allowed matters to be taken out of his hands by prominent Igbo leaders in the army, in the public service, and in public life. Affairs in the public service and the armed forces appeared to lend color to the impression that the coup of January 15 was designed to install Igbos in positions of power. Out of 21 promotions in the army, out of 21 promotions in the army in April 1966, for example, 18 were Igbo officers. General Iransi drew his principal advisors from the Igbo ethnic group. Ethnic groups tend to be chauvinistic, but the Igbos were the most military. I'll tell that again. Ethnic groups tend to be chauvinistic, but the Igbos were the most militantly chauvinistic, and this naturally created apprehensions in the minds of the others. 18 out of 21. Who were the 18? Who were the 3? And what happened to the Yoruba people in the mix? I'll find it for you. I hope you find it very quickly, though. If you read this book that I'm holding, Why We Struck, by Adewale Ademoyega. This is why I say that Igbo people always tell people to read this book. They've never read it in their lives. If you read Ademoyega, this is what Ademoyega said. He said that they took 18 people, exclusively Igbos. Then there was now clamor for other ethnicities to be involved. They now picked 3. After picking those 3, but those 3 they picked were from the north. They picked those 3 ahead of 5 Yoruba people that were supposed to be promoted. It's from Adewale Ademoyega's book. All right, if you have the book, please read it. The page I'm seeing here is where he talked about how he also surrounded himself with Igbo people and was pushing Igbo agenda. I'll read that very quickly. He says, okay, another important point was that we removed the politicians because we were convinced that they were evil, but we did not favor any side. We did not seek to wear the garb of any political party. This we knew for sure. Ironsi, on the other hand, surrounded himself with a particular tribe and chose the political policies of a particular party. The tribe was the Igbo and the party was the NCNC. He could not see that this kind of situation called for the balancing of ideas, principles, and personalities. So what you see here is a total takeover, right, by a particular ethnicity. If I find you that exact quote about the 5 Yoruba people that were left behind because they were going to favor only Igbos. Even the 3 Northerners that they put there, it was may not be like say, you know what? Give me a second. It was may not be like say we don't put anybody from this side. It could just be as though we are being tribalistic. But I love hard copies, but sometimes it's difficult to search. I think I'm close. I'm seeing the places where it's talking about the fact that they were jingoistic, they were tribalistic, and so on and so forth. I think I already made my point, but I like to read. So all of that to say that when what's his name? Ceylon writes in his book that what they did was qualitative, not quantitative. He must assume that we cannot count because 18 out of 21 is not qualitative. I mean, it could be qualitative, but it's not only qualitative. Clearly, I found what I was looking for. Praise Master Jesus. This is from Why We Struck by Adewale Ademoyiga. If the truth must be spoken, Ironsi had implicit faith in his own type of Nigerians, the non-revolutionary and the reactionary types of Easterners and Midwest Igbos. Therefore, as soon as they had taken over the reins of power, he promoted more than 12.5 of them from major to lieutenant colonel and gave them all the senior and sensitive positions in the army and air force. Apart from this, only 3 others were promoted from major to lieutenant colonel, and those 3 were Northerners. Their promotions stemmed from the guilt of Ironsi and his ill-conceived notion of placating the Northerners. But in so promoting the Northern officers, he jumped over the heads of 5 Yoruba officers whom he did not care for. I'll take that again. But in so promoting the Northern officers, he jumped over the heads of 5 Yoruba officers whom he did not care for, thus giving people the impression that the coup was designed and executed to achieve and promote Igbo domination of Nigeria. I just read Why We Struck by Adewale Ademoyiga. The one they always say, go and read. See, as soon as the coup was over, everybody understood that this thing, how do you're talking about Kinikon Garrison, Kinikon Battalion, Kinikon Igbo, the deputies Igbo, then one Easterner who is not Igbo, but is also from the East. They are going to elevate people, 18 Igbo. They say, so they will not think that we are very tribalistic because the way we are doing it now, it's going to look like we are tribalistic. Promote 3 people. Went to look for 3. So the way it is we went to look for 3 Northerners who had 5 Yorubas ahead of them, but you took the Northerners over the Yoruba so that it can appear to not be tribalistic, and in that way you are placating the North. The placating so that's the placating he's talking about though. So I hope I answered your question. The idea that it was qualitative and not quantitative is absolutely nonsense. Because if it's qualitative, we'll not be thinking just about numbers. So we won't be thinking about numbers at all. If it's only qualitative, it's definitely quantitative. Therefore, we're going to look at the quality of officers, but also the quantity. And you can talk about the quantity, say, we dominated the place. Anyway, well, you killed many officers from the other places as well. Why did you kill them? And if you notice as well, when they were executing people in January, anybody that could be a threat to Ironsi was unalived. Anybody. The ones who were not unalived were not unalived because they were not in the country. People like Ogundipe, if you were in the country at the time, they might have killed him. After doing all of those things, you now say, we're just doing quality. That's why I don't like authors from the Southeast. When I say I don't like, I don't mean I hate. By the way, I wrote something the other day. Someone say, how can you say you love people and you say you don't like them? I said, the problem you have is dictionary and Bible. You can love people with, you have no animosity against them, but you're not fond of them. It's not like I like you, what you're writing really makes sense. For the most part, we know where you're coming from. But why do we still read your books? Because it's important to actually hear from the people from the Southeast as well. You can't just say, I've heard North, West, and abroad. No, you have to hear from the East, you have to hear from the South, from the Southwest, from the North. Everybody has to say something. Then you're able to now make up your own mind. And what I've discovered, whenever a person from the East writes, for the most part, of course, there will be exceptions, just to be clear. But this is the rule, including the top man, Chino Achebe. What they do is to find a way to explain away their own roles and create alibis and coincidences and happenstances for their own people and then heap all the blames on others, and then excuse things away by saying things like it was qualitative, not quantitative. I hope with these few points of mine, I want to read another point from Antonio Nauro. This speech was August 12, 1968 at Addis Ababa. There's a line I read earlier, I think I want to repeat. It says, out of 21 promotions in the army, which is what we confirmed from the book by Adewale Adebenga. This is why I said you cannot use one book to understand Nigeria's history. Out of 21 promotions in the army in April 66, for example, 18 were Igbo officers. Where were the other 3 people from? Adewale Adebenga told us that the 3 other people were from the north. But those 3 other people were taken over and ahead of 5 Yoruba officers who should have been promoted. But you didn't see their name. Did you hear anybody's names? Okay, good. Let's go on. Then he says here, General Ironsi drew his principal officers from the Igbo ethnic group. Ethnic groups tend to be chauvinistic, but the Igbos were the most militantly chauvinistic, and this naturally created apprehensions in the minds of the others. Although public inquiries were instituted into the conduct of certain public officers, some of these men remained in positions of power. The public was disenchanted. In the army itself, there was growing resentment about officers killed in the January 15 coup. Non-Igbo officers and rank and file resented the killing of officers from their ethnic groups, while those from the Igbo ethnic group were spared. Major General Ironsi did little or nothing to answer this resentment, which rapidly became widespread in the army. There were continued reports that January 15, 1966 was inconclusive and that plans were afoot to complete the job, in quote, by the liquidation of surviving senior non-Igbo army officers. If you were here when we discussed what happened July 29, 1966, you must have, you probably remember how the thing went down, starting in Abeokuta, and then of course spread to other parts, Ikeja, Ibadan, and so on and so forth. The point of all of this, Turenchi, and I hope FFT is still here. The person whose book you refer to, there are good things in his book. I've also found very interesting things. I mean, truthful things in his book. I see the way propaganda works. Propaganda does not work with lies. Propaganda is not a lie. For propaganda to work, there has to be elements of truth in it. Without the elements of truth, it will be so unbelievable that it will not work. So you have to have truth. I'll use this example a lot. It's like a morsel, like an eba. A morsel of eba, all right? But you need a soup of truth. You dip the morsel in the soup, and then you feed the person. It tastes the soup, but it's swallowing lies. That's how propaganda works. The soup is sweet. Egusi, abi, akpon, abi, for whatever. You like the soup, but you are swallowing lies. That's how propaganda works. And that's what you see in Achebe's book as well. There was a country. It's not like there is no truth in these books. There are truths in them. And that's why I tell you to, if you can, read them. They are good. However, don't just read those books and say, okay, I've read the history. You don't know. Explain away. You have to balance it from other sources. I hope we are good. I hope I answered your questions. Okay. So the first question had to do with Idapo. He said Idapo was not Igbo. Idapo was Igbo. Because Idapo was a pen name used by Nelson Ota, who was an Igbo man. How is the pseudonym, from a different ethnicity from the original person? Could make sense. The other one about this qualitative, not quantitative. When we're looking at the numbers, quantitatively, you are more, and you also made sure that you filled everywhere in every region with your own people. And the crazy part is this cognitive dissonance, where you're literally writing it out in your own book, and you're still trying to explain it away. Could make sense. Having said that, let's go to the next point. Any other question? If you have any question, please feel free to ask. And by the way, I want to thank you very much, FFT, for that question, because questions like that actually help us.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello, FFT. Good evening. I keep calling FFT. It's FTT, right?
Yes, FTT. Anyhow, it's okay.
All right.
Anyhow, it's fine.
Thank you very much for the question.
Yeah, thank you for shedding light on, because I was just confused while I was reading it, because I was like, I know this thing. I've listened to this thing several times, and what angle is this one coming from? So it's now interesting that the Kazidapo himself is an evil person, and that's what they do nowadays. To the, they take on other people's ethnic name to do a lot of nonsense. There's a video I was watching where one guy, obviously from his accent, he's from the East. He's now talking like a northerner, saying the North is not going to vote for somebody, and I'm like, people don't need all these things, bro. And I don't know why Max Leon is such an apologist. And I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends that it's very difficult to explain these things to them. They believe it's the reference. They say no, he's the best. He's not partial. It's like, okay, no worries.
Thank you very much.
So I just hope that more people read more. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. When I was reading, sometimes you know something, but somebody comes and says it's a lie, and I'm like, wait, and I go back and read. And when I was reading, I didn't go back to read. I already knew what was in Adewale Ademega's book, or what Anthony Nauro said, and what Shehu Shagari said. But I went to read his own book again, like She Otolo Sokwe Bekolori. In reading his book, I was like, why would you write like this? And in asking that question, I began to ask myself as well, what's my own motivation? His motivation, regardless of what he says, from a reader's perspective, is this thing where you want to present your people in a certain light. And so whatever makes them look bad in history, you erase it. Or you act like we exist. And then you make it look as though every other person knows the problem. For instance, in a way, it was thank you very much for the gift, Sidan. Operation Wete was the cause of the January coup. I've heard a lot of people say, even some elders have said it.
In the beginning of the book.
Yeah. I read it, yes. I was like, okay. The truth is, you cannot say Operation Wete did not contribute to whatever happened in the coup. Yoruba people, we messed up in that. However, there's no way, if you have all the information, by the way, if you're talking at the time in the 60s that Operation Wete Lofa, it's understandable because that's all we knew. That's all you saw. But if you read the special branch report that was put out, it was put out in April of 66, but it was, of course, was classified for many years and eventually got out, which we now have and we have read, and you can also find it on the Telegram channel. By the way, somebody said they were looking for a book on the Telegram channel. Just go to the learning material section. You'll find whatever you're looking for if it's there. But you find this one there. Once you read the special branch report, you cannot in good conscience hold on to the fact that it was Operation Wete that caused the coup of 66. Operation Wete, to be fair, happened or started in October of 65 after the elections. So it's true. That is true. The coup was executed January 15, 66. So you say October comes before January, therefore it caused it. You are right to the point where you begin to ask yourself, until you ask yourself, the January coup that was executed on January 15, was it planned in January of 66? The answer is no, it wasn't. Interestingly, just a week before the coup, a book was published written by Chinua Achebe. It was titled Man of the People. Please read that book. I've read portions of that book here before. Maybe I'll read it again some other time. Read the book. The man was writing as though it was almost, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but almost like telling us that the coup was coming. One of the people was about the coup. And we had a coup less than a week later after the book was released. You can put two and two together, whatever you want to think about that. And that was what Odia Famum, in his book, Awolowo and the Forgotten Documents of Nigerian Civil War. He was like, there's no way you're going to claim that, when you're literally writing something. And please don't come and be saying that you are a prophet. Or just being prophetic. You're not being prophet anything. You're not being prophetic because the coup was planned in August. Therefore, the October event can only be a catalyst, not the cause. In other words, it sped things up, or it even aided you in executing whatever you wanted to execute, but definitely something else caused what you started planning in August. What happened in October cannot be the reason for what you were doing in August, unless you time travel, which doesn't, we only see in movies for now. So that means basically that when you read a person's book like this, who I can tell you has access to the special branch report because he quoted that book. If you are quoting that and you still insist that it is Operation Wete that caused the coup, what you're really doing is to tell us that it was not just also, see what your right people also did though, that led to the coup. Thank you very much, Prof. It says even Chris Okigbo knew. Many of the intellectuals knew about the coup. It's just that only one wrote a book that, essentially alluded to the fact that there was going to be a coup. Well, it didn't say there was going to be a coup in Nigeria. He just wrote a story about a coup, fictionalized it. Turns out some of the things he wrote then happened on the 15th. But if you talk about it, you are the one with the bigot. People are not serious in this country. All of us should be serious together. Let's bring 2 more people and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Hey, just before we go, then I think he does something too, like he used to do it in his book. He knows that Nzogu was not the original planner. But he frames it in such a way that every time he's talking as if Nzogu is the original planner. He doesn't say it, but that's the interpretation of the way he writes. And thinking about when I read the book with the book from Alabi Sama, there was one part of that book, I can't remember vividly, like verbatim what was said, but there was one part when the war wanted to start. I think it was Okigbo that saw one of those soldiers and was telling that soldier that he read somewhere that Nzogu was saying was the one that planned the coup, that he didn't even know how he started. There's somewhere inside Alabi Sama's book that something like that was mentioned.
Yeah, and I've mentioned the reason people always. I mean, if you're a Nigerian and you say it was an Nzogu coup, most likely you're saying that for 2 reasons. Number one, because Nzogu was the one who executed or who led the execution of the coup or coordinated the execution of the coup in the north. And number two, is that he was also the one who went on radio to announce and even had his full speech. Speaking for the Supreme Revolutionary Kiniko, he was the one who was talking. He was the one who people heard. Was the one who was interviewed by the BBC. So naturally, you would assume that, since he was the face of the coup, he was one who executed the coup. Now I'll tell you this: you can't really say that Nzogu did not execute the coup. There's something. Oh shoot! If I find you something, I'm going to read to you. You cannot say Nzogu did not execute the coup. Of course, Nzogu executes a coup, but he did not execute the coup. The article there changes everything, because when you study the entire period, you know that certain people were revolutionary in their mindset. People like Nzogu, people like Adewale Ademoyiga. I've said it several times. Please get this book. You can get it on Redomi Books. That one is not for free. You have to order. And by the way, books on Redomi Books they are hard copies, so you're going to get the books when you order, and they will be delivered to you wherever you are in the world. Anyway, please get Why We Struck by Adewale Ademoyiga, but don't read it as though. Read it from the perspective of the fact that I'll take that slowly. Read it from the perspective of a revolutionary. By the time you read the special branch report, which is available, like I said, on Redomi Global, you then discover that the coup was not revolutionary in nature. The coup itself was not revolutionary. But Nzogu, they were revolutionary. However, there's another person or another group of people who had another plan that was not revolutionary at all, which was the ethnic part of the coup. And that's why people have to remember that I think it's terrible if you keep calling it Nzogu coup when Nzogu was the 6th person to be invited to join the coup plotters. There were 7 people who planned that coup from the beginning, right? But the last 2 people are the ones people are always quoting. Let me put it this way. They name the coup after the 6th person, then they quote the book of the 7th person and try to find legitimacy for the coup from those 2 people. Okafor Ifajuna, Okafor, and OG started planning the coup. They brought in Chukwuka. Chukwuka brought in Anuforo. Anuforo brought in Uzogu. Uzogu brought in Ademoega. Uzogu brought Ademoega in around October of 65. They started planning the coup in August. Now, why would you call the number 6 person the planner of the coup? When you know that there were 3 original planners and it was not that. But one of the reasons to be this, you know the man is from the Midwest. And you have to find a way to push any blame on your folks out. Because if you read the special branch, thank you very much for the gift, T. The special branch, it said that the so it doesn't look okay. I will tell you then if I have to read it later. I'm looking for another thing from another book. So I'm in my head right now, I'm thinking of 2 books at the same time. I'll find it when somebody else is speaking. But let me just finish this thought. Special branch report says that when the other guys were, recruited into that skinny, they were told that there would be coups. There would be action. I've mentioned this several times. There will be action in 5 places. Of course, that's Lagos and Lagos, Enugu. In reality, nothing happened in Calabar because no helicopter even went there. Nothing happened in Enugu and nothing happened in Benin City, where those 2 people were, the premiers were Igbo. The special branch report said, as a matter of fact, investigations have established the fact that the premier of the Eastern region was complicit in the coup. And why would I believe that? Because when you read Why We Struck, he mentioned it that after they executed the coup, Saturday morning, the question you should ask yourself is this: where did Okafor and Ifajuna go immediately after that? After they executed the coup, early in the morning, they went all the way to Enugu. Ademoega and Anuforo, where did they go? By around 2 p.m., 2:30 p.m. thereabout, Okafor and Ifajuna were already in Enugu. 4:30 p.m., Anuforo and Adewale Ademoega were leaving Ijebu. Guess where they were going also? Enugu. Why Enugu? It's not even about conjectures. It's about what you will find in all these materials. All of that to say this. The people who plan this thing, they have a name, but you keep calling it Nzogu because you're trying to deflect. When you call it, and I've heard many of the leaders, they're always shouting, they know that Nzogu was responsible for what happened in the north, and there's nothing we can do about it. But even Nzogu himself, he thought he was executing a revolutionary coup. I want to read something to you from Why We Struck before I'll find this one later. What they did, if you know what they did to that Nzogu self, right? By the time Ojuku, Madebo, Ironsi, by the time they all got in the mix, it just changed everything. Give me a second. Take a listen to this. This is again Why We Struck by Adewale Ademoega. It says here, if Ironsi's advisors, many of whom are still alive today, were really nationalistic or even rational and politically healthy, as they claimed they were, why was it that they did not advise Ironsi to release Chief Awolowo, Enaoro, Jakonde, and other political prisoners of the Balewa government? If he had done that, the Midwest and the West would have identified with his regime. Instead, he sought for and got only the approval of the Easterners and the Igbos of the Midwest. This particular point he did clearly dramatize by his partisan approach to promotions and appointments, both in the civil as well as in the military services. Finally, how did anybody aspire to rule a nation without politics? If Ironsi had succeeded in doing so, it would have been a precedent. The January 15 revolutionaries would never have ruled this nation without politics. From the outset, we could have organized our own mass movement, which would have clearly defined our ideologies and publicized them and propagated them successfully. Okay, 1 second. There's something I'm looking for. Give me a second. I'll find it. That one actually answer the question that we're trying to talk about earlier. If you really want to deal with that stuff with this book alone, I want to show you something that happened to Nzogu, because Nzogu himself was a victim of another coup, including this man, to Ademoega. That's why all this I'm idealistic, want to build one Nigeria, that you're carrying about as a Yoruba person, they will use you. I'm a one Nigeria person, by the way. I love this country, but you do it with sense. Give me a second. I'm going to find you what I'm looking for. I think it should be here. Okay. Ojukwu was both crafty and selfish, and would neither give nor withhold his loyalty. He was running with the hare and chasing with the hounds. He was an opportunist who put himself above the safety of the nation. When at first Nzogu contacted him on the telephone, he was fully in agreement with the revolution. So you see how he's calling it revolution. Okay. When Nzogu first contacted him on the telephone, he was fully in agreement with the revolution. Soon after that, he was in touch with Ironsi, to whom he pledged his loyalty. After that, he was playing hide and seek with Nzogu, mainly biding his time. The activities of Nzogu on the morning of the coup were directed towards the consolidation of his night victory. He moved quite fast to ensure that those officers who did not participate in the coup were given their chances to declare either way. But Nigerians, being what they were, fought shy of the truth and declared for the revolution, when in fact they were opposed to it. Admittedly, though, if the revolution had been luckier, if it had been in the hands of its forebears, it would certainly have survived and triumphed over its enemies. I'm going to jump to another page because of time. Nzogu went on air and broadcast his brilliant, revolutionary, and highly edifying declarations. It went thus. I'm going to read just a bit of it. In the name of the Supreme Council of the Revolution of the Nigerian Armed Forces, I declare martial law over the northern provinces of Nigeria. He was focused on the region where he was coordinating, the north. The overall coup was the Fajuna. All right. Then he talked about the fact that our method, in fact, let me read a bit of it just to give you some clarity about something else, which I will mention later. In the name of the Supreme Council of the Revolution of the Nigerian Armed Forces, I declare martial law over the northern provinces of Nigeria. The constitution is suspended, and the regional government and elected assemblies are hereby dissolved. All political, cultural, tribal, and trade union activities, together with all demonstrations and unauthorized gatherings, excluding religious worship, are banned until further notice. Listen to this. The aim of the Revolutionary Council is to establish a strong, united, and prosperous nation, free from corruption and internal strife. Now, pay attention to this one line. Our method of achieving this is strictly military. That tells you that the rubbish you hear that they were trying to make Awolowo the prime minister is a lie. If you read Ademoyega's own manifesto, he said it was military. If you read Nzogu's own speech, he said it was military. The lie that it was about Awolowo becoming prime minister actually came out in 1967. And it came out from the Eastern region. And of course, it was voiced a year and a half after they had already done what they wanted to do. Talking to Taisho Larin, Nzogu then said, oh, they had something for Awolowo. But originally, he wrote it here. Our method, this was his speech, by the way. Our method of achieving this is strictly military, but we have no doubt that every Nigerian will give us maximum cooperation by assisting the regime and not disturbing the peace during the slight changes that are taking place. Stay with me, please. Then it says here, back to Ademoyega. This brave and powerful broadcast had the effect of according full credibility to the revolution, while at the same time it damnified the bigotry of Ironsi and his reactionary clique. Having achieved this much, Nzogu was quick to make plans for the control of the remainder of Nigeria. So the people who planned the coup knew that Ironsi's plan was bigoted. And Nzogu did not like Ironsi's angle for obvious reasons. So we're going to read a few more things before we move on from this thing. Okay. So it says here, as soon as Nzogu finished his orders, we'll talk about the orders some other time. As soon as Nzogu finished his orders and before the officers dispersed to prepare for the battle, Major Madiebo sought Nzogu's attention and impressed it on him that the revolutionary battle was very unnecessary. Nzogu was trying to get into the entire country and, sustain the momentum that they had gained in the north. So he told him, you don't have to do all these things, you don't have to do these things. He argued that since Ironsi had accepted the coup as a fait accompli, it was all that Nzogu could wish for. He insisted that Nzogu would be demonstrating an unbridled lust for power if he launched his proposed attack. He advised Nzogu to cancel his plans and surrender to Ironsi, who would gladly carry out Nzogu's revolutionary plans. 1 second, please. Another Egbiri has come in. Bush babies are plenty on TikTok. They're on YouTube as well. This one has 2 followers, 0 following. I'm using a retarded picture. 1 second, though. Let me just mute this Egbiri. Where were we? But it was an act of deceit. Madebo was being mischievous. He did not reveal to Nzogu that he was in constant contact with Ironsi and Gowon, who had both instructed him to destroy Nzogu's revolution. He pretended to be talking in earnest to Nzogu and posed to be a friend of the revolution. By this, Madebo showed himself as an enemy of the revolutionary. I'll tell that again. By this, Madebo showed himself as an enemy of a revolutionary Nigeria. This was the reason why an officer of Madebo's caliber did not reach the peak of his career and output except in the tribal and reactionary war of Ojukwu in Biafra. Madebo acted as an instrument for Ojukwu and helped the latter to prolong the dreadful and wasteful war, which did nothing but destroy the cream of the Igbo race. Just one more thing from this book. Nzogu took Madebo's deceit for good advice. I'm reading Why We Struck by Adewale Ademega. Nzogu took Madebo's deceit for good advice, stood down the troops, and cancelled the plan. The reactionaries recorded success only at the barracks, where they in fact staged a palace coup against the revolution. You know, I say it here often, and it's the truth. More than one coup happened in that period, during that period. In that one day, more than one coup. He is writing here that the revolutionaries, have succeeded, particularly in the north. Okay? But there was a palace coup against the revolutionaries that was spearheaded by none other than Ironsi himself. But I didn't make that up, by the way. But just hold on for me. I want to read something to you. This is People, Politics, and Politicians of Nigeria, 1940 to 1979. It's by Bola Ige. It says, it was said that the latter... where were we? Where should we start? As the coup plan was not carried out firmly and faithfully as the idealists among the planners had proposed, some of the participants, like Ifajina, panicked, and others could not sustain the momentum which Nzogu had generated in Kaduna, from where he was able to take effective charge of all the army formations in the north. He had even pressed Major, as he then was, Hassan Usman Katsina, one of the sons of the respected Emir of Katsina, into service as military governor of northern Nigeria. I'm rushing because of time. Ironsi in Lagos, which is also the headquarters of the Nigerian army, had no great difficulty in threatening Nzogu. It was said that the latter thought of marching troops down south, which we read in the other book, to have a showdown with Ironsi, as he refused to accept Ironsi's authority and order. But in the next 2 or 3 days, when it became clear to him that his colleagues had botched things up in Lagos, Benin, and Enugu, and had succeeded wittingly or unwittingly in giving a tribal twist to the coup, he accepted the promise of safe conduct with Colonel Wanwo, which Colonel Wanwo took to him from Ironsi and surrendered himself. He was quickly detained as soon as he arrived in Lagos. In the meantime, Ifajina had called in Ibadan and stayed a short while at the house in Commercial Reservation before he found his way to Ghana. I'm coming. There's something else I want to read to you. In this book, he also mentioned that Ironsi clearly, had his own plans as far as the coup itself was concerned. Okay. I'll find it while the next person is speaking. Let me not keep everybody waiting. Please go on Math Tuition. I'll find it for you guys. Give me a second.
Olotu, good evening. Good evening, house. Point one. I want to use a Russian analogy for the coup. You know the Russian dolls, a doll within a doll. That's how I would describe that could have happened. So you have like you rightly said, the Nzogu revolutionary and his guys. You now have the Aguiyi versus the revolutionaries, and then now Aguiyi versus the politicians, which is the last one. That's the third one. So that's the door.
Then you have Igbo politicians versus Nigeria before Aguiyi versus Nigerian politicians.
So before all of that, you have the Igbo intellectuals, the Igbo politicians, and the Igbo military elite planning all of this together. And it was common knowledge at that time. Sorry, wọ́n ṣe àyà gbangba pé kò sí àwọn lè ṣe kínní, àwọn lè mú jẹ, because àwọn làwọn wà in ascendancy nígbà yẹn. Àwọn ló wà ní the who is who of power or corridors and civil service. They hold all the keys, including the military at the time. So they felt, in connivance with Zik, they only dominate that the agenda that they had in 1944. Hence, they threw caution to the wind and thought they can get away with it. Unfortunately, it boomeranged. And 6 months of taste of power have confined them to political irrelevance and economic irrelevance. And what was said yesterday on the video clip, that the PDP called the Igbo leadership during the Yar'Adua era, that would like you guys to take the presidency, the vice presidency, but they refused flat out. Is that same mindset? So, second point, what I find very baffling about this particular author, if I'm not wrong, I think he's a young author. The author that
he's not young,
the author that TTW quoted today.
He's not young,
How old is he?
I don't know, but he's not young. He's been writing for more than 10 years. He's not young.
When I say young, I don't mean young as in 20.
He's not even 40.
Okay. So what I find,
it can't be younger. It can't be younger than 50.
That's fine. What I find rather baffling is that he has the benefit of all these books we are reading to consult before he wrote his book. It seems to me that he didn't do that. And again, it's very troubling.
Sorry, Matrishan, sorry, I have to interject again. He did.
He did?
That's the funny thing. When you read these books, you see references to different books. So when I read these books, for instance, I see a reference to another book, I get the book. Nǹkan tó máa ṣe ni pé ó máa ṣá nǹkan tó máa jẹ́ káwọn èèyàn ẹ̀ look good nínú àwọn òwe yòókù. Àbí bọ̀kò ní sọ fún yín nǹkan táwọn òwe yẹn sọ nípa nǹkan tó ń ṣe. Because it's really trying to drive a particular narrative. That's
absolutely. Yeah, which that's what I'm saying. That's what I find rather baffling. I'm even more troubled that he consulted those books and arrived at this particular conclusion. So number one, so that is intellectual dishonesty. Number two is historically inaccurate. And number three, he's doing a disservice to his people and all of us, because apparently the guy is a fantastic writer. And why will you destroy that because you're trying to push a message? I rest my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very, very much. You know, I found what I was looking for. The issue now is that it's so long, and I don't have that time about what happened. And something about Hiransi as well. Lot of stuff. I'm not going to read everything because of time. So here's the point. It says here, as a civilian who abhors violence and murder, I cannot understand or appreciate why anybody should take another man's life in his pursuit of political goals. I do not know or see what hindrance this murdered gentleman would have caused if they were kept under close arrest, as was done with Okpara, Osadebe, and Remi Fani-Kayode. Matt Debo and one or two others have said that Ademulegun was very subservient to the Sardauna, and we too in Western Nigeria heard that Ademulegun was going to lead the troops, which Akintola had referred on Friday. I'll take that slowly. Guys, please, I need to drink water. Madebo and one of the two others have said that Ademulegun was subservient to the Sardauna, and we too in Western Nigeria heard that Ademulegun was going to lead the troops, which Akintola had referred to especially on Friday, 14 January 1966. But I am not convinced that he deserved the death he died. I am aware that life does not mean much to a soldier. It may be that was the reason why so many top army officers were killed with a lack of feeling which horrifies us civilians. The result of the indiscriminate killings is still with us in spite of the various return marches Nigeria has witnessed from the Nigerian army. Thirdly, the two Igbo premiers were unhurt, while all the other non-Igbo heads of government were assassinated. Was this coincidental or deliberate? It's always coincidence from their side. We know what happened, I beg. It must be admitted, however, that both Dr. Okpara and Chief Osadebe were very popular in their regions, and that in spite of Okpara's threats and boasts, he came nowhere near the Sardauna or Akintola in the repression of opposition in his region. As for Chief Osadebe, many would wonder whether he would not feel really at home in the NPC if he were not a very close political associate of Zik. Finally, after arresting the coup leaders, Ironsi refused to take any decisive action either to release them and please the ordinary Nigerians or court-martial them and execute them to please a section of the Nigerian community, but thereby expose to the world that he was something of a reactionary. His dithering led to serious consequences, but he could not do one or the other. He is perhaps the worst thing that ever happened to Nigeria. Amen to that. Check the put perhaps, Abi. We're going to go to the next speaker now. Bumblebee seems on the call. Hello, Bumblebee. Evening, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you very much. Yesterday, I wanted to make some submissions, but unfortunately, the network was terrible. So I'll just go right ahead and make some of the yesterday submission and today in addition as well. So one thing I want to say is, I want to say this. I dare to say that we would have found our way to mainstream politics.
Oh, okay.
We would have found our way back to mainstream politics. You know why? The issue they're having is not because of some of the things they did. It's not just because of some of the things they did. It's the fact that they are doubling down and trying to make excuses for the things they did. They are still in denial till tomorrow. People die. There are people that died. There are people that were alive when those things happened. They are still alive till today. For some reason, they think people have short-term memory. They will find out. 2071 Tosi. They will find out. Oma find out. So, I think it's quite unfortunate what the Catholic bishops did. You know, that was what I was trying to say yesterday. When you look at Baba Deboye, he has a lot of close-up meetings with heads of states, with a lot of top politicians around the world, and he's always very careful. Even when it comes out to say government should do this, it brings it in a form of advice, and it is always very careful, you know, to toe a very, very fine line. There's a fine line between constructive criticism and politics, especially as a spiritual figure. So when these people came out, you see Nayeko has been going around doing a lot of things. He has turned himself to an IPOP spokesman or an obedient bishop at the end of the day. That's what it comes down to. So people need to be wise. And I can assure you that that man is not going to get any audience with any head of states moving forward. So moving on to my next submission, I'm asking myself, why do people want to crash Lagos economy? Why do you want to crash Lagos economy? That is the question. A land that has blessed you. If you think you have something good for your part of the country, you might as well go there and replicate whatever it is you think you did in Lagos. So can that place not be blessed and Lagos be blessed at the same time? Why do you have the mindset that when you leave Lagos, you will crash Lagos because you want to make your place better? That means you never had any good in mind for Lagos in the first place. And I think it just popped up to me. There's something you usually say that traders export our jobs. It just popped up to me. I asked myself, traders don't employ people. One or two salesmen. But when it comes to productive activities, you have people. When you talk You have people 500, 800 when they are on the production line, people that can take money home to their families. But those things, when it becomes a finished good that is imported, that means everybody that was on the production line for that thing to get to the market were foreigners. They are not Nigerians. So people need to be aware. When you talk of people like Cosmos Maduka, he's into the auto business, yes. But guess what? Those vehicles are not assembled in Nigeria. Those vehicles were not built in Nigeria. Those vehicles were either built in Germany or in Japan or anywhere else in the world. That means he has exported Nigeria's money to those countries, to Germany, to Japan. Those are the places that he's making richer. And when he keeps saying he wants to go to his part of the country to go and replicate what he's doing, let him go there and find out. He will find out. Okay, find out. But to find out, let's talk about the person that has found out. This man of landmark, when he was shout place to invest. So it's quite unfortunate that people like that, they pander, they propagate lies because they are greedy. Greed is a very, very terrible thing. Greed is a terrible slave master. They are greedy and they always push lies everywhere they go. He knows, and he was chest beating that he's going to go doing media rounds and all those just to demarket and blackmail the government. But now he has found out that the place he wants to take the investment to is not viable, and people have advised him. Now he's coming back. He's coming back with his tail between his legs. And also, it's quite unfortunate that we have an iPop channel. I was watching. Okay, there was this issue happening that the president said EFCC should stop disturbing Osun State. Initially, they said they are trying to do it's politics, this and that. It's election season. President now said, okay, don't disturb them. Wait till after election. They came this morning to come. I'm like, you guys choose a struggle. Choose a struggle. Stay on one side. It's just crazy. You just ask yourself. So that's just my contribution this evening. Eshegon Prof.
Thank you very much, Bumblebee. There's a video that will be coming out. It's actually ready. If not tonight, it will be out tomorrow morning on YouTube. And I'm also going to put an article on social media. Why there can be no seaports in the southeast. It's a response to that statement that Cosmas Maduka made. But I have a question though, and if you know better than me, and I know many of you many of you do know better than me, so if you can help me with this answer, I'll really appreciate it. Is it possible that an entire ethnicity can somehow adopt victimhood as an identity, such that whether you are rich or poor, old or young, male or female, saint or sinner, if you have anything like that, whatever you are, for the most part, victimhood becomes a culture. And you said something very important, Bumblebee. Why can't people say things like, we want to develop our part, period? We want to develop our part of the country, period. We want to develop our part of the country, period. Why must it be that we want to develop our part of the country in order to break the yoke, to break the monopoly of Lagos, and to destroy whatever old Lagos has, and to remove what the kingdom that Lagos has? It tells you that you don't want to build anything. You're a destroyer. We want to do clinic on Lagos. Whether you build what you want to build, though, or you don't build what you want to build, though, Lagos will still be Lagos. If you remove one thing, that's just one of many things that makes Lagos Lagos. Lagos is not Lagos because of importation. Meanwhile, how can you have a group who thinks that importation is the height of growth? When you import, we all import stuff. Some of the things that we wear and eat, some of the things that we import, it's okay. Not okay for everything, sure. But the truth of the matter is this, right? When we become an import-dependent economy, number one, it shows that you are still colonizing your mind. In other words, what is at home is not good enough. It has to come from outside. But that's even psychological or philosophical. The real impact on the economy is this. The only thing you are doing is that you are selling what you have imported. Everything that is in the value chain has been removed before it landed in Nigeria. It's just you and customs collect this thing and sell. That's all. Trading. There's nothing wrong with trading, but your economy cannot cannot just be sustained by trading, especially when the things you are trading in are not things that you are actually sourcing in your own space. Which is why we respect manufacturers a lot. And every trader, if you notice, when the trajectory, they're always trying to become manufacturers. A very good example that we all know is Dangote. He started as a trader. Then you trade, you buy your sources anywhere in the world, abroad or local, or just sell. After a while, like, you know what? How about creating something here so I can actually produce what I'm selling? Because see, with manufacturing, you have accountants, which is even the office. Inside the factory, on the factory floor, you have the technicians, you have the machine operators, you have the mechanics, you have the supervisors, you have all kinds of people working on the factory floor. Earlier today, I was watching a documentary about Bosch in Germany, and some companies laying off people in Germany. One company laid off about 20,000 people, another one about 4,200, 11,000. In my mind, I was like, how are they able to employ 11,000 people? They are, of course, is car manufacturing company, but it has to be manufacturing. Thank you, Mr. Remy. You have Mercedes, you have BMW, you have all these companies laying off people. But the point is not even the fact that they're laying off people. It's the number of people being laid off. It's not even the fact that those people are being laid off, although that's important. It's the fact that how did they have so much people in the first place? And if they're laying off 10, 11, 20,000 people, that means they still have a lot of people working in those companies. But the kind of companies and industry can absorb that number of people because they are producing something. In Nigeria, we have two options: farming and manufacturing. All this importation that people want to die over, it makes no sense. We have to be telling ourselves the truth. When you have your manufacturing company, apart from what happens on the floor in the factory, you then have the corporate side to it. You have your legal team, you have your advertising agencies, you have your accountants, you have all these things. These are people you're employing, though. If all you are doing is just to import something and sell, where are your accountants? They are selling Boskoro because they have to keep art and soul together. So you'll be complaining, all our accountants, they are working, they are all the people that went to study computer science, they are just selling things on TikTok, they are all on social media doing WhatsApp, at least they are doing something. The reality is this: most of what they're supposed to do after graduating, you don't export them now. So whenever you are depending on importation, and I'm not against importation, I'm just saying that it cannot be the lifeblood of a country, of an economy. And it irks one when you hear people from a particular ethnicity shout like importation is the reason for the existence. People look for ports in order to export. Now, Nigeria, I hear people, they cry for ports in order to import. Import what? What you cannot produce? And we are happy. All the people which suppose they work for your mechanical engineers, all of them, they drag work with you for bank. Would you blame them? Electrical engineers that should help you come up with stuff inside your cars and come up with the electrical connection or whatever, or the technicians that are supposed to get out of technical schools all across the country. They finish, they are doing other things. Why? Because you don't export everything. We don't produce cars. We don't produce. And listen, I'm not saying this to even insult the government, because to be honest, it's not about government. It's not about government. Years ago, people say things like Nigeria does not produce toothpick. I was like, which Nigeria do you expect to produce toothpick? Because again, when we say it, we don't take responsibility. It's as if there's another group that has to do that thing, and that group is called Nigeria. Nigeria is an abstract concept. It doesn't mean anything when you use it like that. Nigeria does not have a pencil manufacturing plant. So, the question is, what are you going to do about it? I think it's military. That military mindset we have could help. We just talk as if we're talking about an abstract concept. Now, call our factories all over the place. You go to other countries, is it their government that is creating all these companies? Is it government that created Mercedes or BMW or Audi? Of course, government will support, but the point is, I remember a conversation in 2004, was a conference, and Fela Durotoye was one who was speaking. It was in Ife. And someone said something. He said he had traveled, or he had a conversation with a Nigerian abroad. Excuse me. This was 22 years ago, thereabout. And we're talking about opportunities in Nigeria. And the person abroad said, they can't really do anything in Nigeria because there's no electricity. You can't invest in Nigeria because there's no electricity. He made a point in 2004, which still makes sense today, that Dangote did not have electricity when it started. And kudos to the small business owners across Nigeria, using generators, solar panels, inverters, and everything. People make do with what they have so that they can scale. The point I'm trying to make with all this Turenchi is this. You should import things that help you create something that can now be sold. In that way, you're also creating jobs for people. People should stop disturbing us online and offline with the fact that something is happening with importation, that they have to go and create ports in their villages, which is absolutely ridiculous. The video will come out later tomorrow morning. You will see the breakdown. If you're going to they say you should put a port. You cannot have a seaport in Onitsha. It is not going to happen. You can hate what I'm saying. You can hug a transformer. That's your business. You cannot. Not because anybody hates that place, but because it doesn't make sense. 62 meters deep. Sorry, 162 meters deep. That's how much you have to dig. 162 meters depth. 60 meters wide. 210 kilometers long from Onitsha to connect to Atlantic Ocean. Where will you get that kind of money? Meanwhile, at the edge of the river, you have pipelines installed. More will break them because you won't put water inside desert. Which land will accommodate that kind of expansion? Are you going to destroy people's homes? Land do not reach before. Kukuna turn them into water. And you have educated people, billionaires in Naira, rich people, go on social media and say they didn't give us any ports. That's why Nigeria's problem is leadership. We don't have ports. It's not about ethnicity, it's about there's a problem. Again, President Tinubu, hear me in Jesus' name. Somehow you will hear what I'm saying. You've got to fulfill Buhari's promise. We need to have those psychiatric outposts in the southeast. You'll be shouting, we want port, we want seaports. How? God didn't give you sea. Your father did not expand towards the sea. You have a lot of things that God has given you beyond the sea. There are things you have that you can do so well without the sea. But you don't talk about anything. You'll be shouting about the things that you cannot have. Coming up with ridiculous plans. Sit at home. Things will go hurt you. Pass the person where you won't hurt. There's a need for help. Anyway, let me end by saying, just end this session, if we still have time, by repeating something that Mark Tuition said earlier. I used to say there were 3 coups. It was when he was talking. I remember it was actually 4. This man talked about the palace coup that was staged against the revolution. So the revolution was a coup. The palace coup against the revolution was another coup. The civilian coup against this government was another coup. They were going to carry it out, but really shelled, so we won't count it. But there was actually a coup that was organized against the civilian administration. That's what you read in the book by Shehu Shagari, Beckon to Serve, and also in this book by Paula Gay. And then you also find it in the interview of Akinjide. Then there was now the coup against the country. The point is, this country will grow very fast if we begin to tell ourselves the truth. I want to repeat what I said earlier because it's important. There is nobody that's only pass. I don't have these sessions to talk about the superiority of the Yoruba people over every other ethnicity in Nigeria. I think that is absurd and it's definitely stupid. Okay, even if I were superior to anybody, it's not by shouting I'm superior. People who do that are actually inferior. That's the fact. The point is just that we have gone through a particular patch, right? If you don't acknowledge what you've gone through, you can't move forward. And it's definitely terrible when the people who got you in this rough patch have this inability to acknowledge. Again, it's a sign of low level development as a culture. If you cannot accept that you are wrong, if you always outsource responsibility, and the same thing on an individual basis, if you work in an organization, you make mistakes, how do you feel when your children do something and they can't own up? That's how your boss feels. That's how people make Nigerians feel. You mess up. You are human. Who doesn't make mistakes? Take it and let's move on. No, Go they look for anybody else where you go insult. Rather. Anyway, that's that about the answers to FFT's question. Now let's go to the bit about Awolowo's speech. Sorry guys. I wasn't supposed to say that into the mic. All right. So this was a speech that was delivered on 7th October 1978. I decided to read this today because we could have actually might as well end, because what we've done today is actually good enough and it's very good, and I'm very glad that people also contributed. But because we still have some time, let's fill it up with this. So the reason I want to talk about this is because we're in an election period, and in 78 they were in an election period as well. They were trying to get ready for, the election eventually brought in Shagari, and so the parties were told to form in 78, and Papa put together the Unity Party of Nigeria in 78, and this speech was the very first campaign of the Unity Party of Nigeria. All right, so I felt I should read that, and if time permits, we'll see how it goes, but if time permits, we'll read something from Obasanjo and the back and forth that he had with Awolowo. We mentioned this a while back, so I felt we might as well do it today if we have the time. So let's get into this. The title is Nigeria Cannot Be Rebuilt with Bricks of Hatred. Let me quickly say something. In this country, any group, I'm not missing words. If you like, don't like it, that's okay. Any group that accuses everybody of hate is a hater. In fact, the group is a hateful group. Any group that accuses every other group of hate is a hateful group. In fact, the person is also a hater. I didn't mention any group, so just think about it. Don't let anybody gaslight you. You hate me. Shut up. Nigeria cannot be rebuilt with bricks of hatred. Full text of Chief Obafemi Awolowo's speech at the first campaign of the Unity Party of Nigeria on 7th October 1978. Chief Awolowo's title for the speech is Nigeria Unbound. Let's get into this. This is the first public rally of the Unity Party of Nigeria. By a happy coincidence, it is also the first political rally I am addressing since 29 May 1962. That is 16 years ago. Since that time, an enormous and incalculable volume of water has flowed down the 4,000-kilometer course of River Niger. During the 16-year period, we have seen troubles and tribulations. We have passed through conflicts, even bloody conflicts. We have experienced fighting without and fears within. We have been involuntary pilgrims through the night of doubt, sorrow, and utter darkness. Indeed, Nigeria's spirit was for that long fast bound in sin and nature's death. But let us thank Allah, let us thank God, who by his infinite love has inspired these men of honor and fame, General Olusegun Obasanjo and his colleagues, to bring us out of all our dreadful ordeals into this day of sunshine and light. So let us all shout and sing in jubilation and in deep gratitude to God. Let us also raise our voices in praise to Obasanjo and his men for the incomparable and historic sense of duty. By the way, why is he saying this? Because Obasanjo was the one who midwifed or engineered the transition of power from the military to the civilian in 1979. So Papa goes on to say, however, as the saying goes, there is many a slip between the cup and the mouth. Nonetheless, I personally feel satisfied that under the sustaining power of God, who has guided them aright thus far, Obasanjo and his men will unbound Nigeria completely and save her to the uttermost. As is now well known, the name of our party is the Unity Party of Nigeria, and our motto is peace, unity, and progress. I want to assure the entire people of Nigeria that we are determined to live up to our name in every sense of it. To this end, we will not relent in fostering and maintaining the unity of Nigeria. In the Nigeria of today and tomorrow, there will be neither Jews nor Gentiles, neither Greek nor barbarians. Accordingly, in the politics of today and tomorrow, there will be neither North nor South, neither Muslims nor Christians, neither Igbo nor Yoruba, nor Hausa nor Kanuri, nor Biram, nor Edo, etc. I look forward to the day, not in the far distant future, when an Ijo would be president of a republic. We had that in Jonathan. And a Biram is vice or vice versa. This, however, will never be possible unless our unity cuts across ethnic and linguistic affinities and disregards religious differences. The peace and progress of Nigeria are dear to our hearts and to the hearts of. Please let me pause to say something. When a Yoruba man is saying this, it means something totally different from when an Easterner is saying it. Just to be clear, I'll explain later. The peace and progress of Nigeria are dear to our hearts and to the hearts of all Nigerians. We of the Unity Party of Nigeria have demonstrated our faithful adherence to these concepts by the way we have conducted ourselves so far, and we are resolved from henceforth to be exemplars of our motto. The goal of our party is a highly disciplined and properly structured and socialist. The goal of our party is a highly disciplined and properly structured socialist society. In the type of society envisaged in our current goal, Nigeria will be able to guarantee a happy survival to all our citizens in the face of even the most inauspicious forces of man or of nature. This is a realizable goal because we know that there are nations today that are in a good position to offer such guaranteed protection to their citizens. But we also know that Nigeria is not at all in a state of readiness to guarantee such protection to you and to me as citizens or to all of us as collectively as a nation. The reason for this is our underdevelopment in every sense of that expression. The reason I want to read this is actually what I'm about to read right now. There are people who blame our underdevelopment on our colonization by another race. While their opinion is right up to a point, it would help us better to look immediately around us for an explanation of the increasing chaos and demoralization that we are experiencing almost 2 decades after the colonizers have handed over the reins of government to us. A critical look at ourselves would easily reveal that our continuing underdevelopment stems basically from illiteracy and ignorance. These two factors, more than any others, have contributed to our poor organization of society and of the means of production. Thus, we have not been able to produce enough good quality foods to keep the body going at full strength. So illiteracy and ignorance join with low quality feeding to baptize the body in disease and confirm the nation in further underdevelopment. Sadly, it's still the same. Before our country can get out of a state of chronic underdevelopment, we must first ensure good health and wipe out illiteracy and ignorance. This is why free education and free health services are so high up in our party's priorities as stated in our first press conference of 22 September 1978. Even if our party had been so short-sighted as to stop at only these two priorities, we would still have been doing Nigeria a good service. After all, a healthy, well-fed and well-educated population provides an assurance for positive change. However, our party has not been so short-sighted as to stop at free education and free health services. We are not asking for change in just any direction. We are not interested in merely producing strong educated stalwarts who will have nothing to do but to plunder and loot and make life unsafe generally for others. That way, we cannot create a happy nation and we cannot guarantee continued survival for the nation itself. Rather, we are determined to restructure the Nigerian society. Jesus is Lord. 1978, Dr. Badru, the context is different. This was after the war. The context has, and I get what you're saying, where people have to think of no ethnicity, kiniko. When you're coming out of the war, everybody's talking about unity. That's why I was saying that the context is different. Shouting unity all over the place right now makes no sense. This was 8 years after the war, so it makes sense that they will still be talking about unity. Let us unite. That's the background. So yes, it sounds different from 47, but the context is that 47 was 13 years before independence. This speech was 8 years after the war. So it makes sense that the conversation will be about unity. But the point is that I found very intriguing. Two things. Number one, the one I read earlier, that when people say it's the colonizers that got us here, there's a book that people often refer to, Why Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And while of course you can make sense out of that to a point, I think a lot of people in Africa, particularly the young people who have these conversations around that book by Walter Rodney, they make it look as though that concept is a crutch. In other words, see what they are doing to us. I don't like that kind of statement personally, because I think it takes away the initiative from you as a person. It takes away your agency. In other words, you are unable to actually help yourself, is what they are doing from outside. So why are you even independent? Why not just cuckoo send letter to them to come and recolonize you, since you are so useless or helpless and useless to yourself? So that's one. But the second thing that also intrigued me is the idea of restructuring Nigeria as at 1978. Okay, so on one hand, you talk about the fact that yes, you have imperialists doing stuff in your country, but you're not the only country that was colonized. They do things everywhere else. How come you're the only one who has refused to grow? And I'm not saying that they're not doing anything, just to be clear. I'm not saying Igbos have, we have independence. There's imperialism, I know. But there was imperialism in South Korea as well. See what South Korea is right now. There's imperialism in Singapore. See what Singapore has become. There was imperialism in Malaysia. See what has become. It's not about imperialism. It's about folks in there as well. I mean, imperialism has its place, but you also have to think about what you're doing as a country, as a people. That's one. Number two, if Awo is talking about restructuring Nigeria in 1978, what does that tell us? Does that explain to us as Yoruba people, and of course, also as Nigerians, but the reason I'm always talking about Yoruba people is because I think that if you have the Nigerian conversation, political conversation as just Nigeria, it sounds good, but it's abstract and it means nothing. I've been hearing that growing up. See, when I was growing up, I used to attend lots of conferences. People telling us about Nigeria. And the reason you grow up at a point like, were they just motivating us or did they even know what they were talking about? And I discovered that they did not even know Nigeria. Those motivational speakers who spoke to us in uni, in secondary school, they did 5 books about Nigeria's history. And I'm not saying you have to read 5 books, so you may not even have to read anything. But I think it's better for you to read. They say readers are leaders, Abi. The point is that all conform motivation, unity, Nigeria. Why do people act the way they do? Why is it that Yoruba people are still talking about restructuring today? Meanwhile, you see it in this book, 1978. Why is it that your political ideology is a certain way? You have to understand that. Then you have to understand why the North thinks the way the North does. So that when you want to work with the North, you don't just be shouting Nigeria, Nigeria. You know they are different from you in terms of political ideology. So you are dealing with them based on that. You're not working on assumption. You're working on knowledge. You're working based on knowledge, not assumption. After all, they say assumption is the lowest level of knowledge, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that I see this and I'm wondering, it gives an idea why there's a continuity, so to speak, in terms of our request of the Nigerian state, or our demand, or our expectation. That's even a better word. Our expectation of what Nigeria should look like. It mirrors the exact, ideology of Papa. And if a Yoruba person, I think you should stick to this. And I'll say it several times when I was talking about Obasanjo and his understanding of Nigerian politics. He reduces the idea of tribal politics to parochial interests or self-aggrandizement of different ethnic groups. Maybe that's what you can say generally, but I think if you embrace what you are as a Yoruba person, you can actually be a blessing to the entire country. That's what I believe. Not the one that will go there and go and be stealing money. And this is not just in politics, in everything. If you embrace the ideology that Awo has, whether you're in politics or you're in business or they appoint you somewhere, you will seek the good of the place and the other people, not just selfish nonsense that we see right now in our political landscape, which is utterly disgusting, by the way. But let's go back to the book. So Papa says here that it says we are determined to restructure the Nigerian society. In other words, we are determined to usher in the kind of change that will make it possible for your government to demand of you and me an output that represents the utmost that our ability can offer. The government will and must reward you and me according to our input as able-bodied people. The government will, of course, have to provide for those who by age or some serious accident of nature cannot contribute meaningfully to the overall to the overall output. But by all means, every able-bodied person must be put to work and must be accordingly rewarded in the name of all that is just. It is a time-honored saying that a fit and able-bodied person who does not work does not deserve to eat. And so it should be. But in order to make it so, we must ensure that the able-bodied man is given an opportunity to work. And if we want him to produce the best of his ability, we must also educate him to the best of his ability. By the way, I understand the fact that restructuring here may be different from what we call it now, but we're going somewhere. Okay? The point is that Nigeria is not properly structured. If you really think about it, if you're really keeping it a buck, Nigeria has never really been properly structured. It's in the other speech. If we have time, we'll read it. If not, I just want to read this um, campaign speech. Maybe Monday or Tuesday. So it says here, if we want him to produce the best of his ability, we must also educate him to the best of his ability. Otherwise, his ability to produce and to benefit accordingly from the system will be severely limited by the circumstances of his birth or of his location. It is an unjust government that leaves you to train yourself by any means you can find, only to turn around when that training is completed or half completed to compel you to contribute to a so-called national cake for everyone else to eat. Thank God for Nel Fund. But it would also be a stupid government that would educate you to the limits of your ability and then leave you to roam the streets or to even turn round and cheat the system that gave you your education. To avoid the inequalities of the past and the possible stupidity of the future, our party has decided upon two other priorities in addition to free education and free health services. These two other priorities are full employment for all and integrated rural development. As you read and digest the UPN manifesto, you will find that there are other areas in which we propose to develop Nigeria, but these four constitute our cardinal programs and national priorities: free education, free health services, full employment, and integrated rural development. On this, we are making a pledge to Nigeria. If our party wins the 1979 elections, God helping us, we shall fulfill each and every one of them. Where will the money come from to do all these things? This is the logical question that people will be asking in view of the current depressed state of the economy. In the coming month, our critics are going to repeat this question and say over and over again that these are empty promises. Do not tell them they are envious or unreasonable, for the question, where will the money come from, is not an unreasonable question. And it may not be enough to tell them, as some of you have already been doing, that Awolowo has always kept his election promises, or that under his financial management, the Nigerian financial system starkly and successfully weathered the storm of a very expensive civil war without financial indebtedness to other countries. While such statements are true, they are merely pointers to our ability to carry out these weighty promises. I admit without hesitation that the problem is colossal, but it is my confident hope that the colossal nature of it will only serve to demonstrate the greatness of our party when we have successfully carried out each promise, possibly with the kind of military precision with which the present administration has implemented its political program. Our details are not for public disclosure, at least not at this stage, but I am now making a promise that the Unity Party of Nigeria will fulfill each of these promises without borrowing money from any international body. For 18 months now, a small committee was engaged. Please pay attention. For 18 months now, a small committee was engaged in thorough research into the structure of the revenue and the expenditure of the federal government and of each of the 19 states. The major purposes were to look for discernible patterns and the extent of growth and behavior since the end of the Civil War, to estimate the cost of those aspects of our party's program that will be government financed, and to investigate and make recommendations on any problems that may frustrate our government's capacity to carry out the promises we are now making to Nigeria. Not only did the committee turn out a mass of highly revealing data on the expenditure pattern of every ministry in the federal as well as each of the 19 state governments, it was able to identify additional internal sources of revenue. Besides, the committee made recommendations on far-reaching financial reorganization. I'll tell it again. Besides, the committee made recommendations on far-reaching financial reorganization and a more productive administration of our existing revenue sources. From all available data and reasonable projections, I am confidently assuring you that the implementation of our four cardinal programs can be effected from Nigeria's internal resources and still leave enough money to modernize our transport and communication systems and to carry out other projects that will rescue us from crippling underdevelopment. Of course, all of this will require a great amount of discipline in our financial administration, in the public sector, as well as in the private sector. The masses of our people will also have to fulfill their own part of what is essentially a social contract. They will need to return to the discipline and sense of social commitment that was not so long ago a noble characteristic of our indigenous African communities. Our strategy in this respect will gradually unfold in the months and years to come. Finally, I wish to remind you all that our motto is peace, unity, and progress. Our party fully intends to live up to this motto. Without peace and unity, we cannot record significant progress. With peace and unity, there is no limit to the amount of progress that we can achieve. In order to have peace and unity, all of us must forget the animosities of the past. I am sincerely and respectfully calling on the leaders of all parties to look forward to a bright future and eschew business. Win or lose, let us all resolve to keep a good sense of humor and preserve the peace and unity of this great nation. 1 second, please. I'm talking very fast. Where were we? Sorry about that. And to you, members of the Unity Party of Nigeria, I appeal to you to refrain from the mudslinging in which others may indulge during the coming month. As members of the UPN, it is your duty to remember that neither peace nor unity can be achieved by mudslinging or the breaking of bones. Nigeria cannot be rebuilt with bricks of hatred. I therefore charge you all, men and women, young and old, in the name of all that is best in the tradition of this dear land of ours, in the following terms. Go forth and present our program to a waiting nation. March forward without looking back. Argue hard, if necessary, for words break no bones. Go out and win the hearts of men and women to our cause. Persuade, do not coerce. Save, do not destroy. Remember that man is the object and target of our program, so do not degrade him by bitter words and unbecoming action during the campaign. Pursue national interest and shun self-seeking. For the success of our program, you are the sole creative force. Do not let the spite of others divert you from the path of creativity. Jesus, this man is deep. Put the past behind you. Let us march positively into a dynamic new Nigeria, a new society characterized by peace, unity, and progress. God is on our side, for we are on the side of the masses of our people. Therefore, victory will be ours. Long live Nigeria. Long live the Unity Party of Nigeria. Up Nigeria. That's the speech. I see you in the comment section. I see you. Now, I want to talk less because of what I said I was going to read. For some days now, we've been talking about the conversation between Awo and Obasanjo. I decided to use it today because Obasanjo mentioned, Awo mentioned Obasanjo in that letter, of course in glowing terms, but I think I should quickly read something here from 70. So, there's a book that I referred to this book last week, but I didn't really get to read it. The Letterman by Musikilu Mojid. We need to get this book on Redomi Books so that people will be able to order, but it's available. We need to update the channel because there's new stock. But this book is actually very good. Okay. Let me read this exchange between R1. I think we should just read this some other day. I think we should because this is long. Let me just ask first. Does anybody want to see anything about what we just read? Anybody? Someone says here, does OBJ think highly? Okay, I even like this. Let's do it this way. It says, does OBJ think highly of himself over Awo between 75 and 79? I think OBJ think highly of himself over everybody. My opinion. Thank you so much for that gift, Titan. Thanks a lot. God bless you. I think OBJ thinks he's the one that understands how things should be done the most. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. But if you read this book, my words, the way he was talking, he was even talking about how people are tribalistic, they are not going to go beyond regional Kineko. He's the one who knows the exact, he knows the best for all of us. And I think that's the problem, if you ask me. You have to acknowledge your own frailty, your own humanity, and the fact that you may not always be right. If you can't do that, I don't think I can really trust you that much. But yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, he thought he knew the way things should go. Let me read something to you. This was from 13 December 1979. So this book is a collection of letters that Baba Obasanjo wrote to different people. That man is a fantastic writer. Like him or hate him, love him or hate him, he's a fantastic writer. So let me read this to you. So the stuff we read earlier is from 78, but something happened in 79. Just going to read this as a response to that. So Obasanjo wrote a letter to our December 13, 1979. It says, Dear Chief Awolowo, you addressed to your party's Congress yesterday and the allegations. So, in the beginning, of course, they were, saying, Obasanjo was a good man because he has brought back, democracy and so on and so forth. But things got all right. This changed over time. And then by December, elections and everything, people had different idea of how things should go. 1 second, please. Mr. Samuel Olutola Akeju on Facebook says, I didn't read your comments on YouTube and Facebook today. I apologize. Someone says, Dairu Mortala says the audio is not good. The audio is good though. I checked. I didn't respond earlier. I'm sorry. I checked. It was good. Check your device, please. Mr. Samuel Olutola Akeju says, according to Ademola Ademega, Nzogo took care of the North, specifically Kaduna. The Igbo sent their children and family to enjoy the free education in Lagos. I saw that firsthand. You people who are older than us, please be telling us so. Thank you very much for that comment. So let's get into this. Obasanjo's December 13, 1979 letter to Awolowo goes, Dear Chief Awolowo, you addressed to your party's Congress yesterday and the allegations contained therein against the federal military government, which I had the honor to lead, and against me personally, impelled me in the interest of... By the way, sorry, this was after election, after Sheikh Shagari had been sworn in. You addressed to your party's Congress yesterday and the allegations contained therein against the federal military government, which I had the honor to lead, and against me personally, impelled me in the interest of Nigeria to write this letter to you. My first reaction was that you, as a seasoned politician, were performing a political act before your Congress and behaving true to politician type. Even if the assertion that all is fair in love and war can be extended to the arena of politics, there are still ethical rules laid down in the Geneva Convention to guide the conduct of war, and these are obeyed by all good and disciplined soldiers. If you go and read the Tragedy of Victory by Labi Sama, he says something different about Obasanjo in that regard, but let's just continue. I expect that some form of ethical rules also applies in politics for its healthy and orderly conduct. I have no comment on your remarks in respect of FEDECO, especially Chief Ani and Mr. Curfy, to the effect that they led all of us to believe that 2/3 of the 19 states in the Federation is 13. Except that as an experienced and astute politician and a distinguished lawyer, you could not have been led by any layman to believe less or more than the law stipulated. FEDECO was set up as an autonomous institution, and it operated as such. The federal military government provided the legal framework and the financial and material wherewithal for its operation. The assertion that there was a grand deception by the federal military government in your address is untrue, and to say the least, unfortunate. Throughout the period of your administration, but this letter is long. Like I said, on normal day I would have finished reading if I was reading to myself. I read very fast, so reading here is too slow for me. Let's continue. The assertion that there was a grand deception by the federal military government in your address is untrue, and to say the least, unfortunate. Throughout the period of our administration as a government, we had no plan to install any party or any individual to succeed us. And if we had had such a plan, you know that we are courageous enough and determined enough to have said so openly and acted so publicly. We did not hesitate to remove from the clean copy of the Constitution presented to us by the Constitutional Assembly Clause 207, which was specifically entrenched to bar you from participating in the first election. We believe as fair-minded young men that the clause offends against natural justice, and we acted to enthrone justice as we understood it, even at the risk of being stigmatized and being branded, not to talk of the inherent danger to our lives. Of course, human memories are short. My speech of exhortation and appeal for peaceful and orderly elections on the eve of the first election was absolutely necessary. I am sure that you, as a participant in nationwide elections in this country before and after independence, appreciated the calmness and the orderliness of the elections, which was in part the direct result of my eve of election broadcast. I believe that all contestants were free and are still free to regard themselves as the best qualified for the exalted position of the President of Nigeria. Their respective supporters are also free to acclaim them as such. The unsuccessful contestants, this is why people don't like Obasanjo, by the way, just in case you are wondering. By the way, all the people that are, arguing on our YouTube and Facebook about Obasanjo not being Yoruba, I know where you're coming from. Nobody wants to even believe that guy is remotely connected to Yoruba people, but I believe he's Yoruba. 1 second, I have to change the audio source, please. Oh dear. I hope you can hear me. Please, can you hear me? Please let me know. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Comrade Lekon, Bonfire, Olariwaju, Mr. Yomi, and Dr. Badru. Thank you so much. Let's read a few more things here. So, Obasanjo went on to say that my speech of exhortation and appeal for peaceful I believe that all contestants were free and are still free to regard themselves as the best qualified for the exalted position of the President of Nigeria. Their respective supporters are also free to acclaim them as such. The unsuccessful contestants and their supporters may or may not necessarily change their views of their competitors. That is the essence of democracy. On the appointment of the Chief Justice, I will only repeat the fact, which I am sure is well known to you, that the Supreme Military Council made the appointment, and I believe that all well-meaning Nigerians all over the country and outside who appreciated the need of the judiciary and the worth of the present incumbent of the highest judicial office in the land hailed the appointment and congratulated the appointee. Your address seemed to have conveniently left out the second interpretation given by the Ministry of Justice on the phrase, quote unquote, in each of at least 2/3 of all the states in the Federation. This is a 12/3 issue. Just for the purpose of clarification, the Federal Attorney General advised that there were two possible interpretations. The first is to give the ordinary grammatical meaning in the words of the electoral decree, in which case 2/3 of 19 would be 12 and 2/3. The second is to construe each to convey the idea of an entity, in which case 2/3 of 19 will be aggregated to 13. The federal military government decided not to get involved in the legal tangle of interpretation. The parties concerned took it up and fought it out at the law court, which is also an essential and indispensable ingredient of democracy. You also asserted that the word each has been deleted in the amended constitution. I commend to your attention Extraordinary Gazette number 48, volume 6 of 29 September 1979, where you find that the word each is still there in the amended constitution in Decree 104, Section 6. Your assertion in your address that the word each has been deleted may therefore be inadvertent, falsehood, or deliberate. I also appreciate that scapegoatism is an element or part of Nigerian culture. Since your address to your party congress was for public consumption, I am taking the liberty of forwarding copies of this letter to the press. In wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, I'm also enclosing a Christmas card. I'm also wishing you success in the coming decade and many more years of service in the interest of our country, Nigeria. I will respond there. Let me read to you what Awolowo said. Dear General Obasanjo, your letter of 12 December 1979 was delivered to me by your courier at about 6 p.m. yesterday. Whilst thanking you for the letter, I have a few comments to make in reply. In the first place, every secondary school pupil knows that 2/3 of 19 goats or oranges is 13. Similarly, all honest and fair-minded lawyers know or ought to know that 2/3 of 19 is 12 2/3 and that 2/3 of each of at least 19 states in the Federation of Nigeria is 13. But since FEDECO, which is the final arbiter in the matter, had in the early stages declared for that latter interpretation, we were all satisfied. If FEDECO had earlier declared for 12 2/3, such declaration would certainly have been challenged in a competent court of law. However, Chief Ani and his colleagues had led everyone, including distinguished lawyers and astute politicians in court, to believe that he accepted the correct interpretation of the law, that in the words of the Federal Attorney General, the word each in the phrase of in the phrase, quote, in each of at least two-thirds of the states in the federation, end of quote, conveys the idea of an entity or a whole which does not imply a fraction or part of a state, in which case two-thirds of 19 will be aggregated to 13. In the second place, I invite your attention to the front page story of the Daily Times of September 1979, headlined, "The New Constitution is Amended." Inter alia, the story says as follows: by this amendment, the controversial phrase, quote unquote, in each of at least has been deleted. This portion of the story, as far as I know, was not corrected by your office. Furthermore, I have tried in vain up till today to get through my chambers a copy of the Gazette to which you refer in your letter. So I have in my address stated the facts correctly, as I gathered it from a report in the leading national paper in Nigeria. There is therefore no question of inadvertent or deliberate falsehood on my part. If the Daily Times statement referred to above is false, then by your inadvertent or deliberate omission to correct it, you have led me and the readers of the Daily Times to believe that the false statement was correct until your letter was delivered to me and published in the papers this morning. In the third place, I had not conveniently left out my address. I'll tell that again. In the third place, I had not conveniently left out of my address the two alternative interpretations given by the Federal Attorney General. This is what I said. The answer he got from the Federal Attorney General was that two-thirds of the 19 states in each of the Federation would be two-thirds of 19, that is 12 two-thirds. But that the word each is the phrase each of at least two-thirds of all the states in the Federation. It conveyed the idea of an entity or a whole which did not imply a fraction, in which case two-thirds of 19 will be aggregated to 13. In the fourth place, you refer to the amendment you made to the Constituent Assembly Clause 207, as if I had shown ingratitude for favor received from you and the SMC. Well, I did not ask for any favor. And long before your unsolicited amendment, I had got my case ready for submission to FEDECO, and that the entire people of Nigeria, to the effect that under the clause as it stood, I was qualified to stand for the last presidential election. For a shorty, I vividly remember Clause 207. It enabled me to do a comprehensive study of the Coker report with its findings and recommendations, which I never did before. In the fifth place, the course of rebuttal and defense pursued in your letter smacks of a good deal of subtle deception. Again, maybe what you object to is the adjective grand. So we will then use subtle. The subtle deception consists of the following. 1. Ban on political activities was lifted on 21/9/78. That's 21st September 1978. From then on, right up to 6 July 1979, a period of more than 9 months, the country witnessed the most intensive good sense and the law-abiding nature of the vast majority of Nigerians, which had carried us peacefully through 9 months of vigorous and exciting electioneering. It is that same sense and nature that produced calm and orderliness during 5 days of polling and about 10 days of counting. This was not at all a direct result of your eve of election broadcast. In this connection, it is interesting to recall that only one paragraph of that broadcast deals with orderliness at the polls. The rest was directed at party leaders and to, quote, the qualities and orientation which you believe the nation requires of persons who aspire to the leadership at this time, end of quote. And part of this unnecessary homilies runs as follows. Babagon Bruno, quote, the electorate is supreme, and one of the implications of this is that the best man or the best team is not necessarily that which the electorate chooses to run the government over a particular period of time, end of quote. You have said this in order to influence votes in favor of Alhaji Shehu Shagari and to make him accepted by the people when you shall have, by all the means available to you, got him installed in the office. I'm not stopping to explain because, why is that? You understand? I don't like code mixing. It's easy to understand, so that's what I'm stopping to explain. Number 2, you have cleverly refused to comment on 2 extremely important charges. The first charge is that the mass arrest of UPN polling and counting agents in the northern states in the early hours of Friday, 10 August 1979, was ordered by top functionaries of the FMG, that's the Federal Military Government, in order that the NPN and FEDECO officials might have unfettered opportunity to rig the vote tally and percentage in favor of NPN's presidential candidate. NPN is Northern People's. What's NPN? I was going to say Northern People's Congress. I now remember it's not NP. That's NPC. What's NPN? It's the National Party of Nigeria, something like that. Don't you know what top functionaries mean? The phrase includes you, the Chief of Staff, Supreme Headquarters, and others in and around. By the way, NPN Shah is the party that Shagari belonged to. All right, so I was right. National Party of Nigeria. Thank you. Don't you know what top functionaries mean? The phrase includes you, the Chief of Staff, Supreme Headquarters, and others in and around Odan Barracks. I am not including the Inspector General because he had disclaimed any part in the atrocity. Again, it is interesting to recall that up till this moment, you have said nothing, not even in your letter, concerning the allegations of maltreatment, degradation, and unrestrained physical deprivation to which innocent Nigerians were subjected on the soil of their fatherland by some men of the Nigerian police force who, ashamed of their beastly conduct towards fellow Nigerians, confessed that they did not like what they were being ordered by big men in Lagos to do. The second charge relates to the appointment of the new Chief Justice of Nigeria. In your subtlety, you have glossed over the inconvenient facts revealed. Instead, you deliberately altered the particulars of offense to suit your defense. Nobody doubts the qualification of Mr. Justice Fatai Williams for elevation to the Chief Justiceship of Nigeria. I myself wrote to congratulate him on his appointment. That is not the issue which I raised in my address. Besides, I never said that someone other than the Supreme Military Council made the appointment. What I said was that the appointment was rushed. Why not leave the vacancy unfulfilled until after October? I also contended that Alhaji Shehu Shagari was not only consulted, but also that it was he who chose Mr. Justice Fatai Williams from a list of candidates. You know the whole truth about this appointment, but you refuse to tell it in your letter. Do you still seriously maintain that the president could not be sworn in unless a substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria was previously appointed? And now you should be able to inform the Nigerian public that what weighty issues of law you envisaged would arise between 21/8/79 and October 1, 1979, and which only Mr. Justice Fatai Williams could settle, bearing in mind that there were other judges on the Supreme Court bench who are as qualified as Mr. Justice Fatai Williams in terms of learning, though not of seniority. I said in my address that the only weighty issues of law that could arise, and which in fact had arisen, were those raised in my election petition. You subtly left this weighty allegation untouched and instead tried to shift the platform of contention to that of qualifications. You and Alhaji Shehu Shagari considered three candidates: Chief Rotimi Williams, Dr. Justice Udo Udoma, and Mr. Justice Fatai Williams. The Nigerian public should be told why you left it to Alhaji Shehu Shagari to make a discretionary choice from among these three giants of the bar and bench, and then use the SMC as the rubber stamp for Alhaji Shehu Shagari's decision. More so, as at the time Alhaji Shehu Shagari expressed his preference to you on 19/8/79 or 20/8/79, both you and that's 20th August. Both you and Alhaji Shehu Shagari knew very well that I had filed an election petition challenging the validity of Alhaji Shehu Shagari's election, and that the matter might, more likely than not, eventually end up in the Supreme Court. In fact, at an informal meeting at Odan Barracks 2 days before the FEDECO perfidiously declared Alhaji Shehu Shagari the winner, you did envisage this course of action. Furthermore, another question which you omit to answer in your letter, and which you must answer, is this: is it proper, legally and morally, that a respondent to an election petition who has no constitutional right whatsoever to do so should take part in the process preference for one from among three candidates, when at the time of the appointment it was already known that the Chief Justice would preside over an appeal in which Alhaji Shehu Shagari might be appellant or respondent? It stands to reason that it was because you were inflexibly determined that, come what might, Alhaji Shehu Shagari was going to be installed president on October 1, that you allowed him to commit the unconstitutional abomination of choosing a new Chief Justice of Nigeria at a time when the validity of his election was sub judice. What did Nigeria gain by rushing the appointment? And what would it have lost by leaving the appointment to be made by the new president after October 1? We know a little, though not enough, of why Alhaji Shehu Shagari preferred Mr. Justice Fatai Williams. Chief Rotimi Williams was rejected because he was said to have expressed a view identical with that of the Federal Attorney General on each of at least 2/3 of the 19 states in the Federation. Dr. Justice Udo Udoma was not liked because he was said to be so friendly with me that he practically ate most of his meals with me. If these were the grounds for preference, I sincerely hope they are not. Then the less said in this letter about the compelling logical inferences, the better. If these reasons were not the true ones, you would be doing public morality and the integrity of the Supreme Court bench a world of good if you could tell the people of this country why, with your acquiescence, Alhaji Shehu Shagari preferred Mr. Justice Fatai Williams to Chief Rotimi Williams and Dr. Justice Udo Udoma. All the above are the questions which you should have addressed yourself to when you commented on the appointment of the new Chief Justice of Nigeria. They are extremely crucial questions, but in your subtlety and in an attempt to deceive, you gloss over them in one short paragraph. 3. Here is yet another form of subtle deception. In your letter, you said that the FMG decided not to get involved in the legal tangle of interpretation. So indeed you did on 14th August 1979. But this was done in spite of the weighty and sound advice of the Federal Attorney General that the electoral decree should be immediately amended so as to 1. Make it possible for 2/3 of our present 19 states to be aggregated to 13, and 2. Allow for a second popular election and a winner selected by a simple majority of votes cast instead of through an electoral college. But since the adoption of this procedure was not likely to favor your favorite presidential candidate, you turned it down on an ostensibly plausible argument. Yet 2 days after the Supreme Court dismissed my appeal, you amended the Constitution to reflect more or less the advice of the Federal Attorney General, which you rejected 14 days previously. And your reasons for the amendment are as follows. Quote, the SMC, was convinced that the provisions requiring election by electoral colleges were fraught with grave dangers and were unacceptable to the generality of the people. Accordingly, the amendment was made in the best interest of peace and stability in the country and in order, as far as possible, to clear areas of doubt and eliminate or minimize acrimonious conflict. By the way, I'm not explaining because I thought it was easy to get, and also I'm looking at the time, but I promise we're going to have another session to discuss Papa's response because this response is brutal and beautiful. When did you realize that the system which your amendment abolished was fraught with grave dangers and unacceptable to the generality of the people, and that these are areas of doubt and acrimonious conflict under the system? Every thinking being in Nigeria Every thinking being in Nigeria outside your infallible and omnipotent circle did realize that the grave dangers and areas of acrimonious conflict were very much present under the system some 2 weeks or so before the presidency was awarded to Alhaji Shehu Shagari. The calm that prevails since then has been brought about largely by maturity and patriotism on the part of all the progressive leaders in the Unity Party of Nigeria and other parties, like the Great Nigeria People's Party and PRP, and not by the threats to our lives, especially to my life, which were said to emanate daily at that time from FMG quarters. I do not apologize for the length of this letter. As a rich latifundist and a retired head of state, you should be able to make time to read the reply to your letter, even though long. As a matter of fact, I have had to curtail the length of this letter because, like you, I have to send it to the press. I had wanted to refer to our discussions on 12th February 76, 5th October 76, and 16th December 76, but it would require more than 4 times the length of this letter to do justice to my allegations and particulars and to your detailed answers, all of which had lasted 2 hours 25 minutes in my house on 12 February 76, 3.5 hours at Dodam Barracks on 5th October 1976. However, the theme of these discussions, as posited by me, is the deep-seated and intense hatred your regime had for me and its determination to exclude me, if possible, from the politics of this country. Do I believe this? I believe so. Why? Because I read my watch. And OBJ, I don't know what it was. And why? I think I have an idea. I just don't like to say it. We'll talk about it when we want to have the session fully. Let's just finish the letter. You should still remember what you told me about midnight on 12 February 76. Said you, quote, people have been putting ideas into that's Murtala's head so much that he now regards you as constituting the greatest danger to his regime, end of quote, which regime you later inherited. On each occasion, I had accused you and your regime of hatred towards me and had given full particulars of my accusation. You had always given a defense which I considered convincing and which I had readily accepted in good faith. But subsequent events are conclusive of your iron determination, though very cleverly and subtly disguised, that as long as you hold sway and command some influence in this country, whoever was president of Nigeria, it should certainly not be me. In this connection, you will remember how you tried hard to convert one of my colleagues to your view that I should be dissuaded from contesting the presidency. You were cocksure that I would lose and suffer disgrace. That was in 1977 or so. You will also remember the campaign extremely cleverly disguised, which you mounted against my party's 4 cardinal programs right up to the end of February 1979. You stopped the campaign after I had reminded you that wisdom does not flow from the barrel of a gun. Then, nothing daunted, he decided to take the wind out of the sails of our free education at all levels program by introducing what you described as tuition-free education at secondary level. On my part, having got information of your intention, I decided to take the wind out of your own sails. In the result, I addressed the press conference at which I called upon you to make education free at all levels before you relinquish office. This is much more than what you were planning in secret. And so when you came out with it, the credit was ours. In the face of all this, how can you, in all honesty, say that your regime is not guilty of grand deception, which is the exact word that Olusegun Obasanjo used in describing what Obasanjo did to them in 2003? In face of all this, how can you, in all honesty, say that your regime is not guilty of grand deception, or if you like, subtle deception, when you declare that you had no candidate and that the election was going to be free and fair? Like you, I am sending copies of this reply to the press and other news media. With all good wishes for a Merry Christmas, Obafemi Awolowo. That's the response that Papa wrote 2 days after Obasanjo sent him that letter. We're going to have a session on this. I'm very careful because I'll tell you why. So, and people don't like when I say this, that just because the person doesn't follow our path doesn't mean that, he's not Yoruba. That is true. However, if you really want to understand this letter and what Awo kept saying that he hated Awo, you have to read Obasanjo's own writing, and even from his own writing, you could tell that he actually hated Awo. He's always speaking against him, or the way he wrote about him as though like he's tribal. And you ask, what is a tribal thing? Because you go through history, right? And then you begin to, because of course it's important to ask questions. You ask the leaders of that first republic. When I say ask, you read their books. All right? Including those who don't like Awo. All right? None of them will use they will say the word that, they will say something like he led his people, but then he tried to transpose that to the entire country. They will not say that he had this parochialism like Obasanjo is trying to. I don't want to say it now because when we get into that book, you're going to see why Awo was right. And I will say to any Yoruba person, any Nigerian generally, I think it's better to follow Awo's path than Obasanjo's path. Obasanjo's path is an abstract path of one Nigeria, which I think makes sense if you're a military man. But since we're not soldiers, we are citizens. We can't think that we can expect growth in the country, in Nigeria. There's another, by the way, there are other letters where they exchange, there are other letters they exchanged between both of them that was more cordial. For instance, in 79, March, in 76, August, and also in July 76, when Papa wrote him, my dear Shegun, that kind of thing. So, but towards the end, particularly because of that election, and nobody can convince me otherwise, that Obasanjo wanted Shagari to win. And I know that by reading his work, what he wrote, he did not say he wanted Shagari to win, but he wrote against his opponent. And then, if you pay attention to the letter we read, he was also, coming up with plans against the plans of UPN. You don't have to tell anybody that you don't want the other person to win. It's not by saying, I don't want him to win. It's by working against one and essentially allowing the other one to be part of the process of selecting a Chief Justice for Nigeria. Those were the allegations. And interestingly, Obasanjo did not reply to this letter that I wrote in response to his first letter. We're going to call it a day now. Someone says, if he was Igbo. So I'm very careful with conjectures because if we begin to say he's Igbo without any proof, why would you believe me if I say anything to you without any proof? Oh, sorry, why should I tell you not to believe others who say things without proof if I can tell you that Obasanjo is Igbo without proof? So I hear what people say. A lot of people are saying he's Igbo, he favored Igbos, and I get all of those things. But the question is, anything solid to say he's Igbo. Therefore, I would not say he's Igbo because I also don't like when people say things without source or without evidence. You get what I'm saying? I think one person wants to come up with that person, and then we'll call it a day today. Who is this? 1 second. Let me see if the person is somebody. It's just one person I want to bring up. Okay, let's have you. I've not seen you up here before, but let's see what it looks like. Berg by you. Good evening. Okay, the person is not here. Okay, one more person. Someone says same him hates Awo, MQ, and Tinubu. There's a reason, and you can actually tell from his works. No, it doesn't. I'm not saying he doesn't hate Awo. I think he does. Maybe I'll not use the word hate. Maybe I'll say, Sherry, Obasanjo believes that he's the one that knows it all. That's why I will also talk about the fact that they were all knowing and omnipotent. But by you, I don't know why this person sends requests if they're not planning to speak. All right, Omo Gboli.
Ọmọ Olúmọ̀jà.
Orúkọ mélòó lẹ̀ ń jẹ́? Orúkọ mélòó lẹ̀ ń jẹ́?
Orúkọ Ọba Akíntóyè nìyẹn. So that's his first name.
No, orúkọ mélòó lẹ̀ ń jẹ́?
Ẹ ṣá àwọn àtàwọn revisionist ni. Ẹ káàsán everybody.
Sorry, ìṣẹ́jú kan. Dr. Bajo actually just stated the reason in the comment section. Anybody, please read that comment. That's if you want to understand where that is coming from, that's the beginning. It gets deeper, but that's the beginning. Someone says, Prof, hating, no sugar coating. I mean, you could call it that, to be honest, because you can't be so against somebody like that. If I should come in one bit. All right, let's listen to
whatever. Okay, so so exactly in Dr. Badru's song, I happen to kind of one way follow former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Nǹkan kan tó ní nìyí, wọ́n like ipò, wọ́n like ìkọ̀gà, wọ́n dẹ̀ fẹ́ kéèyàn kankan tó wọn or kó jù wọn lọ. All these, when you said like being a military person, one Nigeria is okay. I used to think that until I won't come meet or she from, like, TB1 nígbà this. But the Tebawo, nǹkan tó ṣe pẹ̀lú Black Scorpion àtàwọn Yorùbá ẹgbẹ́ wọn tọ́jọ́ wà ní ológun gbà yẹn náà. Ọ̀kan fẹ́ kí ìran Yorùbá kankan kó ga jù wọn lọ àfẹ́mí no more ṣe. Ìgbà ká nípa àwọn àti ọba pa Awolowo súnmọ́ra wọn díẹ̀ ó ṣe kí ni ta síwájú ẹni Yorùbá tó bá ti wá tó bá ti jẹ́ pé èèyàn yìí fẹ́ ṣe nǹkan tí ń ṣe rí àbí èèyàn yìí fẹ́ ga jù mí lọ bó ṣe máa wọ̀ wálẹ̀ ó máa ti torí ẹ̀ lọ dàpọ̀ mọ́ àwọn ará àta ìtorí ẹ̀ làwa kan ṣe ń sọ fáwọn èèyàn pé ní 1999 òun kọ́ ni candidate wà tó ráwà kọ́ la fà á lẹ̀ àwọn aláwùsá ló ń bá ṣe ó kọ́ so àwọn tó ń sọ pé èmi ò ní bá wọn sọ pé ọmọ Ìgbò ni Yorùbá ni àwọn èèyàn míì wà láyé yìí nǹkan tó máa lòdì sẹ́yìn àwọn ló máa ń ṣe irú ẹ̀ ni bàbá yìí.
I agree with you. Mi sọ pé kí n ṣe Yorùbá mi sọ pé ọmọ Ìgbò ni ṣùgbọ́n máa sọ pé exactly what you said. You see have them today now, particularly in the obedient movement. Yorùbá ni wọ́n, but they will be diametrically opposed to whatever can make Yoruba people shine. It has to be, they'll cut themselves to size in order to please others. I don't think it's a very smart thing to do, but I think it's the right explanation of that stuff. One more person, then we'll call it a day. All right, let's have Comrade. Hello, Comrade, please go on.
That's okay, Moro.
No, Comrade.
Hello, Prof.
Ẹkáàbọ.
Jàre ẹ kú ọjọ́ mẹ́ta.
Yes, sir.
Ọlọ́run máa ṣàgbára dọ̀tun o.
Àṣẹ o.
Ọlọ́run ní fàyín wálẹ̀ láéláé.
Àmín.
Ilẹ̀ Yorùbá ò ní parun o, ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà náà ò ní bàjẹ́.
Àṣẹ.
Ọ̀rọ̀ bàbá Ọbásanjọ́ tí tẹ́ dálẹ̀ ní àti bí ọjọ́ mẹ́ta yìí, especially tálẹ̀ ní èmi máa ń ro kinní kan. It's just that It man who won't pay is like an hypocrite. Sorry to say, because if you say you want to address somebody, the sense to me, somebody fẹ́ collect her fún yàn. Maybe it's supposed to be confidential. Okay, prof mo fẹ́ send letter sí yín, even tí mo fẹ́ bá yín jà gan ni, ṣé bó yẹ kó jẹ́ something directly to you, but purposely ó máa make it public. Èmi kàn rí bẹ́ẹ̀ pé he is just like that. A ní nǹkan tí bàbá tó sọ̀rọ̀ tán láìpẹ́ yìí sọ, wọn kì í fẹ́ competition, especially tó bá jẹ́ pé ràn wọ́n. Why not? And it is clear nínú lẹ́tà tí wọ́n kọ wípé he doesn't even want these people. Wọn ní fẹ́ anybody tó bá ti fẹ́ compete pẹ̀lú wọn. So wọ́n fẹ́ downgrade ẹni yẹn so that every other tribe máa lè exalt àwọn. And èmi rò pé yẹn wà nínú ìwà ọmọlúwàbí. I'm sorry to say o. Nǹkan tí mi náà kàn fẹ́ contribute láyé yìí yẹn. Thank you so much, Prof. Ẹ ṣeun báyìí sir.
Ẹ ṣeun sir, thank you so much. Ẹ ṣe. Ń bọ̀. Kíkọ́ máa iná ọ̀pọ̀ fọlá yìí. Má bínú o, mo ń dá wọn sọ́kìn kan bí. So thank you very much. Someone says right now he doesn't like Atiku, but he finds it hard to support Tinubu. Yes. So he may have issues with Atiku, but would rather support Peter Obi than to support Tinubu. I know that thing I understand it. It's just that if I say it, I want to explain it. Well, I don't want to explain anything today. So if you read Dr. Badru's statement or you listen to what Omar Sadeko said, that's exactly what the issue is. Anyway, we've had a good run today. We've answered questions in the matters arising issue. We've also talked about Awolowo's 1978 speech and the response to a statement he made in his party. The response, of course, was from Obasanjo, and then Awolowo then wrote his own letter as a response to what Obasanjo said in his letter, which was made public. This book I just read, so we read The Letterman, Musikilu Mojid, Inside the Secret Letters of former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo. They're really good. It's a really good book. Okay, we read other books as well, and if you watch the video, someone said they came late. The beautiful thing about it is that you can always relive the experience. You can replay the live session. If you go to the live section on our YouTube channel, Busui Oris, you get to see all our live sessions, and then you can replay. That's what we are doing right now. Just look for NGX Rebound, Matters Arising, Awolowo's 1978 speech, and Obasanjo's response. All right? That will be on YouTube. We'll be here again on Monday. If you join us for the first time, we have these sessions every weekday, Mondays to Fridays, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. So we'll be here again on Monday, and we're going to have a great time together. Sometimes we'll have the news, sometimes we'll do history, but regardless of what we're doing, we always have a great time together. So please join us on Monday. If you'd like to support what we're doing, please reach out to me on Telegram. And once in a while, we also put out details that people can use to support us. So I'm going to put it up now in case you are so inclined. All right. I'll do that while we prepare for our anthems. Also, this is August 7th. By September 19th, we'll be having to summit. We'll talk more about it next week. But there's a date now, so it's not just abstract anymore. But there are more details that will be coming in the coming days. But please check out Linktree/Busui Oris for details about to summit. But we'll talk more about it next week. Essentially, it's a forum. We want to create a monthly forum where we can discuss and have conversations, ask questions, talk to each other, talk to one another, and have an opportunity to rub minds. We'll also have a game show that we're starting. We have a new name, by the way. It's not going to be Redomi Global. I was trying to get a name that would be different, that will encapsulate what we're trying to do. So we'll have a game show that will record and that will be online, during that summit. Of course, people who play the game show get to win cash prizes, So please support what we're doing. I think I should even pull up not the account details, the ads just very quickly before we move on to other things. All right, this is to summit. right? If you go to linktree/Busui Oris, you're going to get more details. How you can give. Sorry, I have to take some people down. How you can give or volunteer, host, or sponsor. Okay. All right. So please join the movement. We're going to talk more about it as we get closer to the date. So if you want to support what we're doing, please use the details on your screen. I'm going to remove that momentarily. Thank you very much. So as the anthems play, I'll remove the details on the screen. Here's the Nigerian anthem. After this, I'll play the Yoruba anthem. All right? Let's sing together.
Nigeria, we have our own dearly there. The tribe and tongue in brotherhood we stand. Nigeria.